hit him, had a dazed look because he got hit by a Lennox Lewis right hand.
Oh, absolutely.
Also, but he can't win because if he doesn't foul after the bell, I mean, how is he supposed to answer?
I wasn't telling him to foul.
I
I just meant that was a point at which it looked like he was a beaten fighter.
Max.
Al, Mike Tyson against a guy who's really a super heavyweight, as I've been saying all week. Lennox Lewis is a huge guy, 6'5", 245, against a guy who's been totally dominating the heavyweight division for about a decade now. Took so many titanic right hands in this fight through 7 rounds. Very few fighters would take those punches and keep coming. Yes, Evander Holyfield is one of them. Yes, a guy with resolve of Rocky Marciano would be another, or Muhammad Ali. No, Tyson doesn't quite have those guys' hearts. But I feel he is redeemed in that he did take the beating against a much larger fighter, didn't look for an easy way out, and fought, yes, like a game loser, but he did keep fighting, even throwing hard punches into the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. And really, Lennox Lewis hits as hard with that right hand as Ernie Shavers or George Foreman, I think, or just about anyone in the history of boxing, and he was hitting Mike Tyson repeatedly with it.
You know, guys, I kind of expected to see a Lennox Lewis-David Tua sort of bout, but you know what? Lennox wasn't even in survival mode early on. He weathered an early storm and then boxed Mike Tyson straight up and beat him.
Yeah, he did use one of the elements that he used against Tua. His jab was actually his jab early wasn't so good, was it? But then about the 3rd or 4th round, which is usually when Lennox Lewis picks up the beat, he started doubling with his jab, using it more often, and of course that ultimately set up the right hands that got the job done against Tyson. Tyson never quite closed the distance on Lewis, and when he did get on the inside, a lot of holding by Lewis, which we expected. However, after Eddie Cotton warned him early on to not hold, Lennox Lewis found a way to kind of keep Tyson there around him without doing the holding, and that helped him because I think Eddie Cotton, who was stern in this fight, would have taken a point away from Lennox Lewis at that point.
EK, I think Eddie Cotton did a marvelous job. At the beginning of the fight, by the way, there was a wall of security between the two fighters, something we've never seen before. But once again, to recap, again, a knockout in the 8th round for Lennox Lewis. He beats up Mike Tyson and takes him out. There is the wall of security. And guys, at the start of this fight, we felt it. So much pressure, and we thought it was energy sapping, and I think it was energy sapping to Mike Tyson. He had an initial flurry. He was snapping out, moving his head after the 1st round. By the middle of the 2nd round, Max, that Mike Tyson was done.
Yeah, well, the pressure takes a toll, especially on your legs, especially early in the fight. It took about a round or two for both guys to get their legs underneath them. But look, let's face it. Lennox Lewis, this was a physical mismatch. It was a technical mismatch. It looked like a mismatch after the 2nd or 3rd round. Lennox Lewis much sharper, and you know what? This was typical Lennox Lewis of recent years versus typical Mike Tyson of recent years. The fight played out very much like many of us thought it would. The bigger, sharper guy keeping the little guy who hasn't had as much experience in recent years against top guys at the end of a long jab, following up with right hands, and just like the champion said, should Tyson get through the right hand, waiting for him with an uppercut, it's almost exactly what you'd kind of expect the most likely scenario to be.
Let's start off now. Round number 1. Mike Tyson came out jabbing right away. Lennox Lewis, the linear fighter. Again, the wall of security at the start. They did not touch gloves before they began. Let's start with round number 1 again. Tyson came in. We tried to read their faces. They both looked like overwhelmed by the moment, Al.
Yeah, they really did. You know, both men looked as if, wow, we know this is the most important moment of our career. Now, early in the fight, Tyson did have a little more energy and was throwing some left hooks, as we see here. Also threw some overhand rights. Lewis was a little clumsy in his footwork, which we're accustomed to seeing. There's the left hook from Mike Tyson. And he did throw some pretty good punches early in that 1st round. Lewis fought tall, as we thought he would, and early on, he was starting to use the right hand, Lennox Lewis. He didn't use the jab as much in the 1st round as we thought he might. And as we head into round 2.
Yeah, round 2 now. Again, I gave it to Mike Tyson round 1. The rest of you guys gave it to Lennox Lewis. Round 2, it was Mike slowing down. I thought at about the 2-minute mark, and there we go, standing tall, snapping out the jab.
Well, look, in order for Mike to win this fight, he had to slip and counter. He did a pretty good job of slipping early, but he's not countering. And in recent years, he hasn't been countering because he hasn't put in enough reps in the gym and then battle-tested it against top opposition in the ring. The muscle memory wasn't there. He also had to get over to the side. He didn't do that. Once he got inside, he stood right in front of Lennox Lewis. He also had to move his hands with both hands, especially to the body. He didn't do that. He tried a few right hands. They were long and landed on Lennox Lewis's back.
By the time we get to round 4, Mike Tyson is bleeding and swollen. And here, Lennox Lewis landed with a right hand right away, but this is where there was some controversy.
Yeah, because Lennox Lewis held and hit, as we saw him do against Michael Grant, which we aptly pointed out this week, and that brought a point deduction from Eddie Cotton. Actually, it came when he pushed Tyson down and missed with the right hand. But Lennox Lewis was starting to use the full arsenal. And this was when Tyson was really slowing down, getting swelling over the right eye, a nick around both eyes, really. And there's the right hand from Lennox Lewis. By the fourth round, it was a looser, more fluid Lennox Lewis, who was, in fact, punching very well. That's when Tyson went on from the push, and that's when Eddie Cotton took a point away from Lennox Lewis, making it an even round, and a round in which clearly Lewis had won the round. But at this point, Tyson on the mat and was hit with a good punch prior to this, so he was a little dazed at this point.
You could actually call that a knockdown, but it really wasn't. It was kind of a strange situation, but there was a push. I think Eddie Cotton did a very good job. By the time we get to round number 6, Lennox Lewis is snapping out the jabs. By the way, he had a whistling uppercut all night long, Max.
He did, and really the jab with his hands down, it was dangerous, but it was like showing total disdain for Mike Tyson, and it looked like a physical mismatch. By the way, guys, in between rounds, going into the 5th, I think, going into the 6th, going into this round, I think I heard Mike Tyson say, "I got nothing." And yet he still went out there and took his licking. You know, his corner kind of pushed him out. And because they knew Tyson, even in Tokyo when he was taking that licking against Buster Douglas, still able to put Buster Douglas on the deck for 14 seconds. He got a 9-count, Douglas did at the time. Wasn't called a knockout because Tyson has that kind of power. And I think his two-fisted punching power made his corner feel like they could send him out for a little more punishment than ordinarily they might send a fighter out to take.
Let's go to round 8. Fellas, my thoughts were that Lennox Lewis is unstoppable when he's on his toes, snapping out shots. And here, Mike Tyson would go down from an uppercut, a right hand, a very sharp combination in round 8 from Lennox Lewis.
Yeah, Lewis became the aggressor here in round 8. That right hand sent Mike Tyson down, and it was a short right hand. Lewis at that point wasn't really concerned about getting inside and really doing some brawling with Mike Tyson. We saw a slightly different Lewis because he was willing to mix it up with Tyson a little bit more and didn't have to stay on the outside of that jab and straight right hands. He was even on the inside throwing, as we saw, that little short right hand. Mike Tyson hit the canvas, and this fight in the 8th round would be over. Eddie Cotton saying it is over, and Mike Tyson, at the power of Lennox Lewis, not getting it done.
And Al, what happened when the referee started counting? Mike Tyson tried to get up off the canvas. Just
Take a look now. Lennox Lewis is just kind of the new age of athlete. Look at the highest winning percentage in title bouts for men 34 and older. Lennox Lewis is the older man in the ring against Mike Tyson. He certainly didn't look it. By the way, there were 2 knockdowns in round 8. Eddie Cotton, as we wanted it to happen, got to 10. He counted to 10. By the way, Manny Stewart, between the 4th and the 5th rounds, said step it up. He was screaming at Lennox Lewis that he was not doing enough to finish this man off.
Yeah, he really wasn't. Emmanuel Stewart wants his fighters to be aggressive, and I think he felt at that point Lennox Lewis could walk in and get the job done. I actually heard that, and I thought, I don't know. Jabbing on the outside seemed like a better idea for me to Lennox Lewis, but he was able to get the job done.
There is no question, though, a dominant performance once again from the champion, Lennox Lewis.
I love that graphic we just showed. Over 34 years old, he's 6-1 in title fights, and these are real title fight, folks, not alphabet soup titles. This is the legitimate, linear, undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. He's 6-1 at the age of 36. Like athletes in all sports, we see Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs at the age of 37. Lennox Lewis is the highest winning percentage in title fights at the age of 36.
There were so many stops and starts in the career of Mike Tyson. You know, it was catching up to him all along the way, yet he's got that type of power. He's got that type of leverage. Yeah. The muscle memory from 16 years ago, it's still embedded, but it wouldn't get beyond really round 2.
You know, I have to say, and this is true, as we're sitting here watching this fight, now I'm sure for the people that watched it at home and here as well, up until that 8th round, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, Lennox Lewis has a very low left hand. Mike Tyson was taking a beating, getting hit with jabs and straight right hands. But to be fair to Tyson, there were moments where you thought he could still land a overhand right or left hook. And in fact, as late as the 7th round, tried very badly to counter Lewis when he threw a very rare occasional left hook. And Tyson threw a whistling left hook of his own. So he still felt dangerous to the end, even though we realize now that he wasn't.
We're getting our first look right now at the number of punches that were thrown. Let's take a look at what was thrown here. Jabs for Mike Tyson, 134. Lennox Lewis, throwing more than 70 more jabs in this fight. Connection, I mean, not even close in percentage landed. You can see, hey, Lennox Lewis was a marksman. Again, it was scary the way he kept that left hand down, but Al, it was very effective. There's no arguing.
Yeah, and you know what? The percentage landed by Lewis is what he's probably most happy about. And you look at the Tyson jabs. No, we don't expect Tyson to throw a lot of jabs, but you know what? He used to jab his way in, and early in this fight, I think you guys will agree, in round one, we saw Tyson land a couple stiff jabs, and I said to myself, if I'm in Lennox Lewis's corner, I'm going, uh-oh, that's not supposed to happen.
Al, 134 jabs through, 6 or 7 rounds for a little guy like that is a lot of jabs.
Take a look now. Punches thrown overall. Lennox Lewis, 328 to Mike Tyson, 211. And look at the punches landed. It was a lopsided fight, Max.
It was a total statistical mismatch. It was a total mismatch in the ring. It is time to start giving Lennox Lewis his props as a great heavyweight champion. In this day and age of enormous heavyweights, yes, he's been knocked out twice, but he's beaten everybody. Galata, Grant, Tua, Evander Holyfield, really twice. Now Mike Tyson in a total domination. The guy is a great heavyweight.
Lennox Lewis is the heavyweight champion of the world, and again, he's answered every question. He's been a dominant heavyweight champion. He's had a legacy fight before against Evander Holyfield, and then had to do it again and won that fight, although that was an even closer fight. And tonight against Mike Tyson, as Manny Stewart said, he's the last one. He was still there. Mike Tyson, though, knocked out in the 8th round.
Not there anymore.
No, he's not. He is down and out. Mike Tyson loses in the 8th round. Lennox Lewis is king once again, a knockout winner here in Memphis. Let's go back to the studio.
Thank you, guys. Lennox Lewis retains his WBC IBF belts. He's 4-0 career in title bouts against opponents who are not taller than 6 feet. Meantime, none of Tyson's last 13 fights have ended in decisions. We'll hear from Lewis and Tyson in the live post-game news conferences coming up on ESPN News. Lennox Lewis knocks out Mike Tyson in the 8th round at the Pyramid in Memphis. Lewis improves to 42-1 with 31 KOs. He's 14-2-1 with 9 KOs in title bouts. He landed over 50% of his punches in the fight. As soon as both fighters step up to the mic, we will take you to the live post-fight news conference right here on ESPN News. So Lennox Lewis does what many thought he would, knock out Mike Tyson. It took him 8 rounds, but it is all done. Brian Kenny has more live coverage from Memphis.
Welcome back here to Memphis. Brian Kenny here at the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee. Lennox Lewis with a knockout in the 8th round takes out Mike Tyson. Manny Stewart, a very busy man between rounds. Let's get more on that now from Jeremy Schaap. Jeremy?
Brian, thanks very much, Manny. What were you exhorting Lennox to do between rounds?
Well, he was controlling him with the left jab, but I was wanting him to throw more right-hand punches because I saw that Mike was tired, he was exhausted, and just a little bit more pressure I know he would have gave. And particularly throwing uppercuts because Mike was tired and his judgment was off, and all we needed was just a little more pressure, and I know the fight would be over with.
At what point do you think that Lennox broke Mike's will?
I think about the 4th round. I think at that point he realized that Lennox was just physically too big and too good. And even when he did attempt to punch, Lennox was like always a step ahead of him. And then the left jab got to be a bigger factor as the fight progressed. He just couldn't get away from the jab. And actually, Mike's entire fight got to be trying to watch Lennox's jab and trying to watch for a right hand, and it was just too much for him.
It appeared that Lennox lost the 1st round. What were your thoughts as that round was going on?
I told him he lost the 1st round, but I was kind of frustrated because all he had to do was settle down. He came out and did what he was supposed to do to get some respect from Mike right away, and he stood toe-to-toe with him, and then after that he got into a lull. And once he settled down and started working behind his left jab, everything fell in place.
Manny, you've been together so long. You've been training him since 1994 and fights since 1995. Is this the best you've seen him?
No, this is not the best. I've seen him better than this. But, I mean, it's just that Lennox is a lot better fighter than people give him credit for, and Mike Tyson is not as good a fighter as they keep giving him credit for. Mike used to be a good fighter. And I still felt that in their prime that Lennox would have beaten him because of styles. But I think that Lennox actually broke Mike down the 1st round, first of all, by standing there and fighting with him, which surprised him, and even caught Mike with a few good punches. And actually then he started physically handling Mike, which he was told to do. And that physically drained Mike a lot. And Mike was primarily, I think, trained for a 2 or 3 round fight. When I got looking at his body, it looked like he'd been doing a lot of weightlifting, trying to get his strength up because of Lennox being so big, which meant that your muscles become fatigued after 2 or 3 rounds if you don't score a knockout.
What was Eddie Cotton telling Lennox?
I thought Eddie Cotton was a little bit overly. In fact, even the last knockdown, I think he was ready to try to call that a push down and not even counting me. And I saw him try to do that, and then he looked and saw them counting. Seemed like he was picking on Lennox. I'll be very honest with you. Lennox fought the fight that he was supposed to fight as a big man by tying up the guy when he got in close. And every time he tied him up, I could see Eddie wanted to push and interfere with him.
Was there a certain moment at which you realized Lennox had this fight won? I mean, I know that you thought he was going to win, and you said that he was going to win by knockout, but there's always a grain of doubt somewhere. When was that doubt erased from your mind?
The second round. Once Lennox settled down, I really could see his superior talent and size was going to be a big factor. And I could see that Mike was never going to hit him with too much of a clean punch, because he always had a sense of when Mike was going to do a punch, and he already had made the defensive move before the punch ever started.
Considering how thoroughly Lennox dominated this fight, is there any point in having a rematch? Does Mike deserve a rematch?
I don't think there'll be a rematch. I mean, I'm not even worth getting into. I mean, it was a total mismatch after a certain point. The only time that Mike was in the fight was when the referee was taking points from Lennox, giving them to him. But other than that, he wasn't in the fight after the first round.
Manny, does this in many ways vindicate Lennox Lewis?
I think it vindicates Lennox Lewis in a lot of ways, and he's beaten every fighter of his era, never dodged anyone. And when you look back at him, as I've said before, his history record is going to be phenomenal. And I think now there's really nothing he can do if he just wants to make a mandatory and fight Chris Byrd. But he's proven himself to be the dominant heavyweight in boxing now for the last 10 years.
Manny, congratulations. Back up to you, Brian.
Jeremy, Manny, thank you very much. Brian Kenny here with Al Bernstein and Max Kellerman. After the fight, we should point out there was an act of sportsmanship between the two fighters.
Yep.
They both got together and they hugged. And then Mike Tyson said, thanks for giving me this fight, and then asked for the rematch. But I agree with Manny. What's left to rematch here, Al? There's nothing left to prove.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense because Lennox Lewis thoroughly dominated this fight. And I'm sure for Manny Stewart and for Lennox Lewis, this is a great moment of satisfaction, because we should remember that Lennox Lewis has been questioned all the way through. Even in the build-up to this fight, there were many people that thought one big right hand, one big left hook from Mike Tyson, and Lewis was going to fall. So this is certainly a big moment for both of them, and a big moment for Stewart, who, as Jeremy pointed out, has been with Lennox Lewis for a long, long time. They've been a very solid team.
Is now 15-1-1 under Manny Stewart, and that's really 16-1. The one loss to Hasim Rahman, and that's about it. Max, I don't know what more he can do. I know that might be criticism. Oh, could have been better. We've seen a better Lennox Lewis. You know what? He broke him down, and he took him out in 8 rounds, Max.
What Manny said just then is exactly right. Lennox Lewis was too big and too good. And, you know, going into this fight, I wrote an internet column on ESPN.com where Tyson would rank should he win this fight. I said he'd be in the top half dozen heavyweights of all time. And people were saying, what? How could you say that? This would be the only big fight he ever won. That's how much I think of Lennox Lewis. Now, yes, he's been knocked out twice, but they were by big punchers in an era of 240-pound heavyweights for fights for which he was underprepared. He avenged both losses, both times by knockout. The one against Rahman was devastating. He's now beaten Evander Holyfield twice, Ray Mercer, Andrew Galata, Razor Ruddock, David Tua, Hasim Rahman, and Michael Grant. He's totally wiped out this entire era, and he is a great heavyweight champion.
Also, by the way, you wonder, would he have beaten a prime Tyson? You know what? Tyson's younger. Whatever. Tyson's the younger man in the ring. This is their prime. They're both fighting in their prime right now.
Well, you know what was interesting, and Emmanuel Stewart says that about Tyson in his prime, because he feels very strong that the style matchup wasn't a good one. One of the things Lennox Lewis did a little bit in this fight was what George Foreman did against Joe Frazier, pushing Tyson off when he wasn't holding. And really, Eddie Cotton forced him into doing that by taking the point away for holding. So as a style matchup, it would have never been a good matchup for Mike Tyson, but certainly a younger Mike Tyson would have made this a much more compelling matchup, that's to be sure.
Certainly, but not Lennox's fault that he didn't stay in shape through all those years, went to jail,
not.
And everything else.
And Mike Tyson was an early developer. He was in his prime at around 21, 22 years old. Lennox developed a little bit later. But, you know, Lennox's style is that of a boxer. He's tall, he's rangy, he has the long jab. People don't understand how hard he hits with the right hand. The overhand right and the uppercut in the history of boxing, the biggest punchers of all time, I'd say he's right there with Ernie Shavers, George Foreman, and Mike Tyson. And he was landing that right hand on Tyson all night long. Tyson took 7 or 8 rounds of continual right hand pummeling. Lennox Lewis is a tremendous puncher, doesn't get enough credit for his punching power.
He is the pugilist specialist, as he says, and the gentleman brawler is the king. Once again, Lennox Lewis, the heavyweight champion of the world, and now Mike Tyson losing his 3rd straight heavyweight championship bout. Most all time, Larry Holmes were former heavyweight champions. Tyson losing yet again, lost twice to Evander Holyfield. Lennox Lewis, the the heavyweight champion of the world. And yeah, this is it. He has now cleaned out the heavyweight division, the Ring Magazine champion, the heavyweight champion of the world. For Max Kellerman and Al Bernstein, I'm Brian Kenny. That's it from Memphis. Let's go back to the studio. Keith?
Thank you, guys. Mike Tyson only landed 49 punches Saturday night. In his scuffle with Lewis around 2 months ago, he may have landed more. We're waiting on the live post-fight news conferences on ESPN News. Keith Russell here on ESPN News. A great day in sports on Saturday. The fight is over in Memphis. Lennox Lewis knocks out Mike Tyson in the 8th round. It was what many thought he should do. Of course, we're waiting on the post-game. Make that the post-fight, live post-fight news conference coverage. So there you can see Tyson, his 3rd straight loss in title fights. It was the first title bout in heavyweight history where both fighters were 35 years of age or older at the start of the fight. Now, as we go inside the numbers, they pretty much tell the story from the fight. Tyson landed just 23% of his punches compared to 59% for Lewis. In jabs, Lewis landed almost as many as Tyson threw. Tyson only landed 49 punches in the entire fight. He only threw 211. Lewis threw 328, landed 193. In this fight, something strange, but something needed nonetheless. There was a contract clause that a fighter who committed a vicious foul would have to pay the other $3 million if the fight ended because of it. And maybe for that reason, Mike Tyson kept his cool. He took his punishment, took his lumps, and in the end, he took the canvas and he took the loss. Lennox Lewis improves to 42-1 with 31 knockouts. We're waiting on him to take the mic. We're waiting on Mike to step up as well. The live post-fight news conference coverage right here on ESPN News. Welcome back. More from the fight in Memphis. Here's Brian Kenny live.
Keith, thank you very much. Eddie Cotton, a very busy man, the 3rd man in the ring for Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. Let's go inside the pyramid right now and Jeremy Schaap. Jeremy?
Brian, thanks very much. Eddie, in the 4th round, Mike Tyson was down on the canvas. You ruled it a push down. It appeared to some that he was knocked down. What was your thinking?
Well, it wasn't a thought. I seen Lennox push him, and then on top of that, while he was down, he threw a punch at him. That's why I took a point away from him.
You seemed very upset with Lennox several times during the fight. What was he doing that so upset you?
Okay, on 3 different occasions. One, I think in the later rounds, he had his elbow doing a break to Mike's throat. Another one, he was doing some excessive holding, which was early in the fight. And then I think about the 5th round, I talked to him about holding and hitting. So I gave him 3 different warnings.
The dirtier fighter here tonight was clearly Lennox Lewis in your eyes?
Well, I don't want to say he was a dirty fighter because all week people have been saying that Mike was going to go wild and do this and do that. And I told you earlier that Mike was going to fight a good, clean fight. I think that Lennox's style, you know, he apologized to me later.
You were watching those mouthpieces pretty closely, though, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Lennox actually came up to you, and he apologized for what?
He apologized when I told him, I said, all right, Lennox, you're going to keep playing around and you're going out here. And he said, no, okay, I'm sorry.
Manuel Stewart, Lennox's trainer, obviously, said he thought you were too activist in the ring, and he thought that there was a point at which, when he delivered the knockdown blow in the 8th, he thought you were going to step in and say that was a pushdown.
Lennox?
Manuel.
I don't know. He must have had his sunglasses on if he said something like that.
Eddie, you think you refed a good fight tonight?
I think I did a great job.
Thank you very much, Eddie Cotton. Back up to you, Brian.
Jeremy, Eddie, thank you very much. Back now with Al Bernstein and Max Kellerman. All right, you can disagree with me. I thought he did a great job. I didn't think I have a false move in that fight, Al.
No, I thought Eddie Cotton did a good job, not a great job. He was very definitive, and that part was good. But I think I think the one thing he did about not making Lennox Lewis hold helped make this a more interesting fight and ultimately helped Lennox Lewis do better. But he's wrong when he says Lewis threw a punch when Tyson was down. He threw it while he was pushing him down and missed. So if that was the point, what the point was deducted for, Eddie Cotton did wrong there. And I do think he was a little excessive in his activity.
Al, Max?
I agree with Bernstein.
Go
Brian.
figure.
Yeah, I think Eddie did a good job, not a great job. I think that in his effort not to, unjustly penalize Tyson, he overcompensated and was a little quick to take that point away from Lennox Lewis. Now, Lennox did what he did to Michael Grant and David Tua, hold the guy down with a left hand, whack him with a right uppercut. That's against the rules. It's dangerous, and he shouldn't get away with it. But the warning came quickly. The point deduction just seemed to come a little quickly. But I do think overall Eddie Cotton did a good job.
Hey, he established control. That's against the rules, and he set the tone of the fight. And again, Lennox Lewis ended things cleanly with the knockout in the 8th round. Lennox Lewis, with his mom, he takes all the belts back home with him. That'll do it for right now here in Memphis. Let's go back to the studio.
Thank you, guys. Mike Tyson was seeking to become the first heavyweight to win a title in 3 different decades. Unsuccessful in his attempt. We're expecting to hear from both fighters in a few. Begin with a prize fight. Not any prize fight, a prize fight involving Mike Tyson, so you know it figured to be downright yummy. And it was in the first round for Mike Tyson, probably the only round he won in the fight. And then it got ugly from there. An 8th round knockout after Tyson had blood around both his eyes and his nose. Mike Tyson was seeking to become the first heavyweight to win a title in 3 different decades. Lennox Lewis improves to 4-0 career in title bouts against opponents who are not taller than 6 feet. Brian Kenny recaps the fight and much more from Memphis.
Here at the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, Brian Kenny, Al Bernstein, and Max Kellerman. And in a relatively clean and historically significant bout, Lennox Lewis lays claim to an entire era. Lennox Lewis never had that unification matchup with Riddick Bowe, but he did beat Evander Holyfield really twice and has now finished off what was left of Iron Mike Tyson. Let's pick it up in round 1, the only close round, fellas. So much pressure at the start. We could feel it, and you know what? They're human. They could feel it.
Yeah, they really could. As they came out, you had to wonder what they were thinking. There was a lot of pressure, both men with a lot on the line. In the first round, Tyson had probably his best round of the fight and maybe won this very close round. He jabbed his way in there a moment ago, landed a couple of good left hooks. Lewis landed a few good uppercuts. Those uppercuts were a portent of things to come, and there's the straight right hand by Lewis. But round 1, he stood and fight with Tyson, but Tyson did pretty well. Round 2, however, was when Lewis really started to pick up the pace. There's the jab. That would become the dominant punch in this fight for Lennox Lewis. And here comes the uppercut. That would be the second most dominant punch. That along with the straight right hand. And Tyson was very effective with those uppercuts, got Tyson's attention early.
By the time we got to round 4, Max, Mike Tyson is bleeding and the uppercut is whistling.
By the 4th round, this fight was a mismatch. Physically, you could see it. Lennox was much bigger. Tyson could not get inside the jab. There you see Lennox Lewis landing a right hand. And by the way, folks, Lennox Lewis's right hand is delivered either over the top, like you see right there, or underneath from the uppercut, just about as hard as any punch was ever thrown in the history of boxing. He landed it repeatedly against Mike Tyson. Another right hand. I mean, Tyson absorbed a lot of those right hands. He couldn't get inside the jab. Now, in the 4th, Eddie Cotton deducted a point from Lennox Lewis for, I guess, holding and hitting and pushing Tyson down. But what it looked like to me was Tyson was hurt with a right hand. Lennox put a little pressure on Mike Tyson's back, and Tyson willingly went down. I think Cotton was so concerned with not being unfair to Mike Tyson that he bent over backwards and overcompensated, against Lennox Lewis. By the 6th round, I mean, this fight, it was just a matter of time. When's it going to end? Lewis controlling the space, playing with Tyson with his hands down by his side. You'd think dangerous against a puncher of Tyson's caliber, but there you see, right hand all the way down. Tyson's corner imploring him. Ronnie Shields, look, his hands are down. Throw the hook, throw the right hand. Tyson could not get close enough. When he did get close, he got whacked with uppercuts.
By round 8, Tyson had that Tokyo Buster Douglas look, Al.
Yeah, he really did. He looked like a very lethargic fighter who couldn't go into later rounds, which we suspected beforehand. That's one of the few right hands to the body that Lennox Lewis threw. Actually, neither fighter went to the body very much in this fight. Again, the uppercut, that became a theme in this fight as Lennox Lewis started to get Mike Tyson in trouble. At this point in the 8th round, he went to his knees, and the end was near.
Yeah, I thought I heard him say, Al, a couple rounds earlier, I think going into the 6th, I have nothing. I'm not sure, but it sounded like that to me, and he really didn't have anything. Lennox Lewis certainly did. Look, this was typical Lennox Lewis against typical Mike Tyson of recent years. It's a predictable result, and there's an image a lot of people will be happy to see, and some people won't be, and there's a great heavyweight champion.
Tyson went down from an uppercut right-hand combination first, and then after that, it was one right hand, kind of like that right hand he'd used to deck Hasim Rahman, a clean shot, and Eddie Cotton, the referee, counted to 10. So no controversy, nothing to do with any of the things that people were worried about at the start of this fight. Lennox Lewis knocks out Mike Tyson in the 8th round, knocks him down twice in round number 8. It was a mismatch as far as the punches were thrown as well. Again, you may have given Mike Tyson the first round. I gave Tyson the first round, but it was close after that. Guys, I don't think you can give him a round. You fight, you go to the punch stats, you take a look at what was thrown and what was landed. It's all Lennox Lewis. But we did wonder, while the fight was on, we wondered, could Mike Tyson land that one shot?
Well, and he didn't, and part of the reason was this number, the jabs that Lennox Lewis threw. Landing 53% of your jabs is terrific, and Mike Tyson not going to land many jabs, but he couldn't jab his way in effectively. That jab was the dominant punch for Lewis to control
and you
the
can
fight.
see Tyson tried to 134 jabs a lot. Nothing landed hardly, and punches thrown. Lennox threw more shots, landed at a higher percentage, landed more cleanly, landed the bigger shots. This fight was a total statistical mismatch, and it was a mismatch in the ring.
Manny Stewart, the trainer for the heavyweight champion, says this is vindication.
Lennox Lewis in a lot of ways, and he's beaten every fighter of his era, never dodged anyone. And when you look back at him, as I've said before, his history record is going to be phenomenal. And I think now there's really nothing he can do if he just wants to make a mandatory and fight Chris Byrd. But he's proven himself to be the dominant heavyweight in boxing now for the last 10 years. I don't think there'll be a rematch. I mean, it's not even worth getting into. I mean, it was a total mismatch after a certain point. The only time that Mike was in the fight was when the referee was taking points from Lennox, giving them to him. But other than that, he wasn't in the fight after the first round.
And Lennox Lewis is the new age athlete. Look at this, 34 and older for heavyweights. Lennox Lewis now 6-1, and you know, right now he's standing on top of the world. It's not as if, well, he's barely hanging on, he's just staying with the game. No, Lennox Lewis is still the king at the age of 36. Mike Tyson, give him credit for this, Al. He said before the second Holyfield bout, I always take my beating like a man. Give me that. He took his beating all right. Lennox Lewis doled out the beating.
Yeah, and Mike Tyson was gracious afterwards. We do have to give him credit for that. You know, the thing I hope doesn't happen is that revisionist historians look at this and say, oh, well, you know, he beat a diminished Mike Tyson. Yes, he did, but they do that a lot with Lennox Lewis. After he beat Galata, they said, oh, he wasn't so good. After he beat Akinwande, well, he held a lot. He beat Michael Grant too young. He beat David Tua. He was one-dimensional. The fact of the matter is, Lennox Lewis fights everybody they put in front of him, and he has fought the best in his division, as Emanuel Stewart said, and he deserves acclaim now as heavyweight champion.
And by the way, you have to be careful against David Tua and Mike Tyson. And he had an 8th-round stoppage in this fight against a Tyson who came in looking like he was ready to win, although he was gassed by the second round.
People get fooled by Lennox Lewis's style. They think of him as a cautious boxer. He is, but he can punch as hard as anyone in the history of boxing with that right hand, including Foreman, Shavers, Mike Tyson, anybody. He's a tremendous puncher. And, you know, I said before this fight, should Tyson win, I'd put him in the half-dozen heavyweight champions of all time. And people were like, what are you talking about? He's to be the only big fight Tyson ever won, at least since the Spinks fight. This is what I'm talking about. It's all about how much I think of Lennox Lewis. This guy has totally cleaned out the division. He's beaten Evander Holyfield twice now. He just totally dominated Mike Tyson. The young guys like Grant and David Tua and Hasim Rahman. In the past, they're almost 10 years ago, guys like Ray Mercer and Razor Ruddock and recently Andrew Galata. He's beaten everyone they put in front of him, and yes, he's been knocked out twice. In this day and age of 240-pound heavyweights, that can happen. He's avenged both losses by knockout, and that graphic was great, over 34. He has the highest winning percentage in title fights of any heavyweight in history, just like Barry Bonds. It's 37 home runs, 73 home runs at the age of 37. Lennox Lewis is still growing strong at the age of 36, a great heavyweight champion.
Well, the judges were not a factor. Neither man has ever lost a decision. You go out on your shield with these two fighters, and Tyson did indeed, and now this is third straight title bout loss. Of course, he had two to Evander Holyfield, and now to Lennox Lewis, and there was no question about this. Eddie Cotton, by the way, took away a point from Lennox Lewis. Is that ironic? We've talked about Lennox. He did it to David Tua. He did it to Michael Grant. He will hold and hit. He did it here. I thought Eddie Cotton did an outstanding job.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about this fight is, and it speaks to probably part of the reason why Lennox Lewis won, he was also the rougher fighter in there. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say dirty, though there were a couple of spots where he maybe bent the rules, but they said it, when you fight a bully, you need to bully him. The reason Evander Holyfield beat Mike Tyson was after that first round, Tyson hit him late, Holyfield hit him right back again. Lennox Lewis asserted himself in many different ways in this fight, and that was one of them.
Mike Tyson had a glorious era from 1985 to 1988. We wondered if he could recapture the magic. As it turns out, he could not, at least not against Lennox Lewis. Just moments ago, Jeremy Schaap talked to the former heavyweight champion of the world.
Look at Jeremy. Say hi to Jeremy.
How you doing? What's your name?
His name is Miguel.
Miguel?
He's going to be the next champ.
How you doing, man?
He's going to be the next champ.
Miguel, what'd you make of the fight?
Daddy had a bad day at the office. I'm just glad he's alive to come and play with me.
Mike, at what point did you think you couldn't win this fight?
Oh, man, I don't know. He had me hurt from the beginning. He just kept me hurt all through the fight. Oh, baby, be nice. And he was just fighting constantly. And man, he was wonderful tonight.
You know, he said quite often that Mike Tyson had never seen a fighter like Lennox Lewis before. Is that now something you can say that he was right about?
Well, I don't know if I've never seen a fighter like that, but tonight he fought magnificently, and he was the best fighter tonight.
Where do you go from here, Mike?
I don't know, man. I might just fade into Bolivian, you know what I mean? I don't have nowhere to go and nothing to do, you know what I mean? I just go fly my pigeons on the roof in New York, you know?
You're not going to fight again?
I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chill out with my children and fly my birds. I'm just, listen, I'm not in your guys' world. I'm a street guy, you know what I mean? I don't have to ever worry about seeing your guys, like worrying about your guys judging me or saying anything about me because it really doesn't touch my bases or my nucleus. So I'm just happy to be talking to you, and I'm just happy that you're doing well. You know, I'm sure your father would be proud of you. And I have a great deal of respect for you, and I'm glad just to be having this interview with you.
Thank you, Mike. Considering how dominant Lennox was tonight, do you think you deserve a rematch? You are contractually, you are contractually entitled to one.
Well, like I said before, I talked to Shirley Finger, if the price is right, I'll fight a lion, you know what I mean? I want my children to have the same lifestyle I have and live the same lifestyle I live, so yeah, I'll fight anyone.
After the first round, it appeared that you had won that first round. Did you think you won it on all rounds? Did you think you had this fight won?
No, because in the first round, he really, believe it or not, he hurt me in the first round, and he had kept me hurt.
When did he hurt you in the first round?
I wish I knew, and I would tell you. But yeah, he hurt me in the first round.
You fought a lot of good fighters over the years. You fought Evander Holyfield twice. Is this the toughest opponent you ever had?
Well, listen, tonight he was the toughest. He was victorious, and a loss is a loss, and you really can't equate who's tougher from a loss. You just know you got your butt kicked, and you can't say, well, he kicked my butt better than he kicked my butt. I don't know. It's just, I'm just happy that he did a wonderful job and he didn't kill me in there.
Mike, you were very gracious. You have been very gracious after this fight. Has this in some way been a transformation for you? So what's happened this evening?
Hey, nothing's been a transformation. I have respect for all fighters. I don't really say anything bad about fighters. I'm just a good salesman. And I just want everybody to be happy, and it's glad that both of us left the ring healthy.
The knockout punch, from your perspective, what was it like?
I couldn't see the punches coming. My eyes was pretty closed. And like I said, he basically just wore me down. He was too big and strong.
You said before the fight that you didn't respect him. Now you're saying you do respect him. How much do you respect him?
Listen, I always had a great deal of respect for Lennox. Me and Lennox has been friends, ironically, since we were both 15 and 16 years old. I've known Lennox before anybody in boxing known Lennox. And this is just what competitive people do. This is what they say. This is what they talk. Oh, boy, I'm so sorry. We're in a hurt business. And, you know, in this business, people get hurt sometimes. But we're not violent individuals. Most fighters probably never had a street fight, you know what I mean? But, you know, this is just what we do. This is a science. This is a discipline. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a tough guy or a brutal guy to be masterful in this particular discipline.
He said, Mike, that he wanted to hurt you because you had bit him back on January 22nd. Did you ever get a chance tonight to apologize to him for the bite?
Well, listen, I'm sure he know I didn't mean to hurt him, but, you know, we're in the mix of fight and everything goes, you know what I mean, love and war.
Were you doing all those wild things from January through the press conference most recently to sell tickets?
I did a good job, and I did a good job, and I'm just happy, you know what I mean, that we fought and it's over, and that if it's possible we could do it again and get another payday, you know what I mean? Because it's really, this is a beautiful sport and it's been great to me.
You seem very much at peace with yourself right now, much more so than in most of the opportunities I've had to speak to you recently. Are you more at peace right now?
No, listen, I have a great responsibility. I have to take care of all these children. I have a different stage in my life right now. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm getting soft or not, but, you know, I used to love taking care of my children and flying my birds. I have a different aura in my life right now.
Was there a particular moment during the fight, Mike, when you realized that you weren't going to win the fight?
Well, no, I just kept fighting until the fight was over. You know what I mean? Because anything's possible.
When did you realize how good Lennox Lewis is?
Well, when the bell first rang, he was just fighting magnificently.
Mike, thanks very much. Anything else you want to say tonight?
No, I'm just, I'm thankful all my fans came out. I'm sorry if they're disappointed. I really appreciate the support. And Memphis has been magnificent. And I thank Lennox Lewis for giving me a shot.
Mike, thanks very much. Former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson.
Jeremy, thank you. He could hardly be any more gracious, even bringing up the late Dick Schaap.
Hey, what you want? He took
well.
his beating in the Douglas, Holyfield. Now Lewis fights like a man, and he's always a gracious loser.
We hope to speak to Lennox Lewis a little later on. That'll do it from here in Memphis. Let's go back to the studio.
Thank you, guys. Mike Tyson, very eloquent in defeat. And as he lays there on the campus, we will hear from the man who knocked him down to stay in a few. If you haven't heard, Mike Tyson goes down in the 8th round against Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis retains his WBC, IBF heavyweight belts. The numbers told the story. Tyson landed just 23% of his punches compared to 59% for Lewis. Lewis landed almost as many jabs as Tyson threw. Lewis picks up his 14th win in heavyweight title bouts, while Tyson loses his 3rd straight. Joe Louis was the heavyweight best, 26-1 in title bouts with a division record, 25 consecutive title defenses. Here's Brian Kenny.
We have already heard from a gracious former champion, Mike Tyson. Let's hear from the heavyweight champion of the world, Lennox Lewis, with Jeremy Schaap. Jeremy?
Brian, thanks very much. An absolutely convincing victory for Lennox Lewis, retaining his 2 championship belts. Lennox, does this make up for the bite?
Absolutely. I said that I was going to discipline Mike Tyson in the ring, and that's what I aimed to do. I went out there and did it. You know, I got off to a sticky start, but then, you know, Emmanuel Stewart told me to settle down, so I settled down. And after that, it was just showing the world that I was a pugilist specialist.
What were your thoughts in that first round that it appeared you lost?
You know, I just wanted to show him that I wasn't scared of him. He was trying to intimidate me and trying go for the early knockout, but you know, we were basically getting used to each other, and he always takes one round, and that was the first round to do that.
Mike Tyson once famously said that everyone has a plan until they are hit. Did you ever feel the full force of his power?
You know, he hit me with a good left hook one time, but you know, I curved that off, and I came back with my own punches. I just wanted to go in there and hit him first. His plan was to come in there and hit me, but I wanted to definitely hit him.
Lennox, at what point did you realize that I can hurt Mike Tyson and he can't hurt me?
I think it was like the 3rd round, 4th round. You know, Emmanuel Stewart told me to step to him and, you know, put him out, get rid of him. He's slow. And I just wanted to soften him up with my jab a bit more, and that's what I did.
In the 4th round, you had him down on the canvas. Eddie Cotton said that it was a push down. Do you think it was a knockdown?
Yeah, it was definitely a knockdown. You know, Eddie Cotton, the ref, it seemed like he was working against me. He said he took a point off because I hit him when he was down. And I was saying, no, I didn't hit him when he was down. But, you know, the ref is in there to control everything. But, you know, I had a lot of things working against me, but I was able to come through.
Lennox, and then take me to the 8th round and the knockout punch, the whole sequence.
Well, you know, I was throwing my jab, and, you know, it didn't seem like he could get away from my jab, so I was just, you know, putting that probing jab out there and seeing which way he was going to duck, and he really was ducking to my right. So I threw a looping right hand and caught him straight on the chin and put him out.
You said you were going to win this fight. You said you were going to win it by knockout. You said you would win it easily, but there always has to be some kernel of doubt in the back of your mind. When did you erase that kernel of doubt?
Well, when I was starting to get to him, when I was seeing that, you know, I was cutting him open with my jabs when his nose was bleeding, you know, that just inspired me more. And the Memphis fans were great. They were cheering for me, and a lot of fans out there cheering for me. And, you know, I felt good in there.
The significance of this victory in your storied career?
Definitely a defining moment for Lennox Lewis's legacy.
Do you feel you've silenced your critics?
Absolutely. You know, what else is there for me to prove? I've proved everything.
Did Mike fight well enough to deserve a rematch?
Well, you know, I need to go and look at the tape and see what happens, but, you know, my main thing is to show this sweet science of the sport, and that's what I went out there and did, hit him and not allow him to hit me and make it very difficult for him to hit me, and, you know, I definitely have to go look at this fight afterwards.
That's not quite an answer. Emmanuel said he doesn't deserve a rematch.
Well, you know, it depends what the people want. If the people want to see it again, if they still can't believe it, I'll definitely do it again. You're right. Lennox Lewis is forever.
Lennox, congratulations. Lennox Lewis now 42-1 in his distinguished career.
Jeremy Champ, thank you. Al Bernstein, Max Kellerman joining me. Even when you're rich, you want to get paid. He wouldn't mind doing that again, and he's going to box. He's a pugilist specialist, and he brings the hammer down.
Yeah, and you know what I thought was interesting? Number one, he did a great job of, he'd be a great politician, actually, selling the possibility of a rematch. One thing we can take away from that interview that Jeremy did, Lennox Lewis doesn't look like a man who's ready to retire, even though this would be an opportune time to do it. And he's performing very well, certainly, so nobody needs to rush him into retirement, but it's clear we'll see Lennox Lewis again.
Max, you often point out just how difficult it is to clear out any division at any point in the history of the game.
Yeah, very few fighters have done it, and Lennox Lewis, maybe one or two more fights, will have done it. He's a historically great heavyweight champion. He proved it again tonight. He was too big and too good for Mike Tyson.
Lennox Lewis, the heavyweight champion of the world. Perhaps Chris Bird could be next, but again, this was the threat. Manny Stewart said he's the last one of the era that could challenge, potentially,
Those
Lennox
two belts
Lewis.
are not important. He is the real heavyweight champion of the world, with or without any belts.
That'll do it from Memphis. Let's go back to the studio.
Keith Russell saying welcome to ESPN News. Saturday was a great day in sports. We start with the prize fight that was from Memphis, from the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee. Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis. We have highlights of that fight, at least still pictures of that fight we can show you. 8th round action. Lewis lands an overhand right. Then Lennox lands a left uppercut that stung Tyson, and that would finish Iron Mike. Here's a reversed angle of the overhand right, and you can see the blood flying all over the place. Tyson laying bloody on the canvas. He was down for the count. He could not get up. So Lewis would hold his arms up high after the KO, an 8th round KO. He retains the WBC IBF belts. It was the first ever heavyweight title bout in Memphis, Tennessee. Lewis improves to 42-1 with 31 knockouts. Tyson falls to 49-4-2 with 43 KOs. Mike was seeking to become the first heavyweight to win a title in 3 different decades. Now, with Lewis being 36 years old and Mike being 35, due to turn 36 on June 30th, this was the first title bout in heavyweight history where both fighters were 35 or older. More from Brian Kenny on the big fight out in Memphis.
Lennox Lewis did not rule it out. He said, you want to see that again? I'll give it to you again. So for the benefit of those who did not see this fight, Al, is there any reason why we should see these two go at it again?
Let me tell you something. You'd need a better spin doctor than my good friend James Carville to convince people that there should be a rematch. Mike Tyson was dominated in this fight really from the beginning to the end, and even he admitted in his interview with Jeremy that he was hurt from the first round on and kept getting hurt. So there's really no reason to want to see these two fighters in the ring again.
I know, Max, you've said before that Mike Tyson could go on a European tour for years and years. People would pay to see it, but now he's lost convincingly. I don't think he can beat Evander Holyfield either. What does he do?
Mike Tyson is a major celebrity. He will always be able to fight for at least 7 figures. They'll find someone for him, be it John Ruiz, despite the fact that he's promoted by Don King, or anybody else. They will find someone they feel Tyson can beat, and they'll put him in the ring with Mike.
Al?
I think it's going to be a hard sell for Mike Tyson right now, and I think that at this juncture, they're going to have to really find somebody out of the United States that he can fight where he can get a payday.
How about the champ now? There's Chris Bird, Vladimir Klitschko, Jamil McCline. Who's next, Max?
Listen, Lennox Lewis just finished off his era. He is a great champion. But to say that he cleaned out the heavyweight division, there's one man. His name is Vladimir Klitschko. He's 6'6". He weighs 245 pounds. He has knockout power in both hands. He's an Olympic gold medalist. He's a perceived threat to Lennox Lewis. Should Lennox Lewis beat him, we can say not only did he clean out his era, he finished off the heavyweight division.
And let's say this about Lennox Lewis. The fact of the matter is that's just the kind of challenge that he likes. So rather than retire before he would meet that challenge, he'll show us what a warrior is by fighting this man who potentially could beat him.
Hey, he's taken on everybody. I mean, Tua, Rahman, Holyfield, now Tyson. Lennox Lewis systematically, methodically going through the heavyweight division. A knockout winner in the 8th round. the pugilist specialist, is king once again. That'll do it from here in Memphis. Let's go back to the studio.
Lennox Lewis knocks out Mike Tyson in the 8th round to retain his WBC IBF Heavyweight Championship. Hang tight. Much more ESPN News is on the way. The prize fight. Any prize fight involving Mike Tyson figured to be downright yummy. From Memphis, Tennessee, 8th round action, Lennox Lewis lands an overhand right. Lewis lands a left uppercut that stuns Tyson and finishes off Iron Mike. Here's a reverse angle. Tyson, bloody, on the canvas, could not make it before the count of 10. So Lewis retains his WBC IBF heavyweight titles. Lewis, his 4-0 career in title bouts against opponents who are not taller than 6 feet. None of Tyson's last 13 bouts have ended in decisions. Lennox now 42-1 with 31 KOs. The biggest prize fight in Memphis, Tennessee. Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. We have still pictures to show you. 8th round action. Lennox Lewis lands an overhand right. Lennox would land a left uppercut that would finish off Iron Mike, and we will show you the reverse angle as well. Tyson could not get off the canvas. He was down for the count. An 8th round knockout. Lewis, 4-0 career in title bouts against opponents who are not taller than 6 feet. Lewis 42-1 with 31 knockouts overall. Tyson falls to 49-4-2 with 43 KOs. None of Tyson's last 13 bouts have ended in decisions. He was seeking to become the first heavyweight to win a title in 3 different decades.
Thank you. Here with Al Bernstein and Max Kellerman. Lennox Lewis has told us it's important to him to finish off his era. He did just that here in Memphis. Lennox Lewis lays claim to an entire era in heavyweight boxing. He never did have that matchup with Riddick Bowe. He didn't fight Evander Holyfield until he was 33. But against Mike Tyson, he finishes off an entire heavyweight era. Again, these gentlemen, they are separated only by 10 months in age. Mike Tyson may have won round 1. After that, it's all Lennox Lewis.
Lewis in round 2 using the jab and then the uppercut. Both those punches would become really major stories in this fight. Again, the uppercut by Lennox Lewis. Tyson leaning in, and Lewis told us beforehand that punch would be a big one, and we see repeated use of it as we head into round 4. By this point, Lewis was really taking control of the fight and had hurt Tyson. However, there would be a point in here where he would hurt Tyson, push down on him, and Eddie Cotton, the referee, would come in and actually take a point away from Lewis for holding and hitting.
Yeah, and going into later in the fight, guys, this really turned out to be a one-sided physical and skills mismatch. A dominating heavyweight champion, kind of beating a relic from the past in a way. Mike Tyson was smaller. He was a heavyweight. Lennox Lewis was a bigger super heavyweight. And there is that picture right there. Shot says it all. It's the tragic end of an American anti-hero, at least in terms of his position in the sporting world. And that is a picture of a great heavyweight champion.
Tyson went down twice in that 8th round, and it was one right hand, a clean right hand, and it was over. Eddie Cotton counted to 10, and you see the numbers tell the story.
Yeah, and the big numbers there, I think, of the jabs. Lennox Lewis landing 53% of his jabs. That set up all the other punches like the right hand.
After the fight, Jeremy Schaap spoke with both fighters.
Lennox, does this make up for the bite?
Absolutely. I said that I was going to discipline Mike Tyson in the ring, and that's what I aimed to do. I went out there and did it. You know, I got off to a sticky start, but then, you know, Emmanuel Stewart told me to settle down, so I settled down. And after that, it was just showing the world that I was a pugilist specialist.
The significance of this victory in your storied career?
Definitely a defining moment for Lennox Lewis's legacy.
Do you feel you've silenced your critics?
Absolutely. You know, what else is there for me to prove? I proved everything.
He was the best fighter tonight.
Where do you go from here, Mike?
I don't know, man. I might just fade into Bolivian, you know what I mean? I don't have nowhere to go and nothing to do, you know what I mean? I just go fly my pigeons on the roof in New York, you know?
You're not going to fight again?
I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chill out with my children and fly my birds. I'm just, you know, listen, I'm not in your guys' world. I'm a street guy, you know what I mean? I don't have to ever worry about seeing your guys, like worrying about your guys judging me or say anything about me because it really doesn't touch my bases or my nucleus.
Were you doing all those wild things from January through the press conference most recently to sell tickets?
I did a good job, and I did a good job, and I'm just happy, that we fought and it's over, and that if it's possible we could do it again and get another payday. Because it's really this is a beautiful sport, and it's been great to me.
A very gracious Mike Tyson after the fight. He was humbled by Lennox Lewis, and Lennox Lewis, for him, he knew this was a legacy fight. He puts a stamp on the heavyweight division here.
He really does, and I hope that revisionist historians don't start denigrating all of the opponents he's fight, the excellent fighters like Tua, Akinwande, and Galata. And now, of course, it was a diminished Mike Tyson, but Lennox Lewis has fought the best he could fight and beaten them.
Tyson came in, I think, to win this fight, Max, but he was subdued by Lennox Lewis.
Well, yeah, he lost to the better man, like he said. Mike Tyson has always been a gracious loser, with the exception of the second Holyfield fight against Buster Douglas, the first Holyfield fight now against Lennox Lewis. He takes his beating like a man, and when the referee starts to count to 10, he gets up.
Yeah, Lennox Lewis, by the way, he knows how to stay on point. He's a pugilist specialist, and he is the heavyweight champion of the world. That'll do it here from Memphis for right now. Right now, we send it back to the studio.
Saturday was a great day in sports. Keith Russell happened to be part of it. We start with the fight in Memphis, the heavyweight title fight between Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. Brian Kenny and the gang recap the big night that was in Memphis, Tennessee.
Keith, thank you. Here with Al Bernstein and Max Kellerman. Lennox Lewis has told us it's important to him to finish off his era. He did just that here in Memphis. Lennox Lewis lays claim to an entire era in heavyweight boxing. He never did have that matchup with Riddick Bowe. He didn't fight Evander Holyfield until he was 33. But against Mike Tyson, he finishes off an entire heavyweight era. Again, these gentlemen, they are separated only by 10 months in age. Mike Tyson may have won round one. After that, it's all Lennox Lewis.
Lewis in round two using the jab and then the uppercut. Both those punches would become really major stories in this fight. Again, the uppercut by Lennox Lewis. Tyson leaning in, and Lewis told us beforehand that punch would be a big one, and we see repeated use of it as we head into round four. By this point, Lewis was really taking control of the fight and had hurt Tyson. However, there would be a point in here where he would hurt Tyson, push down on him, and Eddie Cotton, the referee, would come in and actually take a point away from Lewis for holding and hitting.
Yeah, and going into later in the fight, guys, this really turned out to be a one-sided physical and skills mismatch. A dominating heavyweight champion, kind of beating a relic from the past in a way. Mike Tyson was smaller. He was a heavyweight. Lennox Lewis was a bigger super heavyweight. And there is that picture right there. Shot says it all. It's the tragic end of an American anti-hero, at least in terms of his position in the sporting world. And that is a picture of a great heavyweight champion.
Tyson went down twice in that 8th round, and it was one right hand, a clean right hand, and it was over. Eddie Cotton counted to 10, and you see the numbers tell the story.
Yeah, and the big numbers there, I think, of the jabs. Lennox Lewis landing 53% of his jabs. That set up all the other punches like the right hand.
After the fight, Jeremy Schaap spoke with both fighters.
Lennox, does this make up for the bite?
Absolutely. I said that I was going to discipline Mike Tyson in the ring, and that's what I aimed to do. I went out there and did it. I got off to a sticky start, but then, Emmanuel Stewart told me to settle down, so I settled down. And after that, it was just showing the world that I was a pugilist specialist.
The significance of this victory in your storied career?
Definitely a defining moment for Lennox Lewis's legacy.
Do you feel you've silenced your critics?
Absolutely. What else is there for me to prove? I've proved everything.
He was the best fighter tonight.
Where do you go from here, Mike?
I don't know, man. I might just fade into Bolivian, you know what I mean? I don't have nowhere to go and nothing to do, you know what I mean? I just go fly my pigeons on the roof in New York,
You're not going to fight again?
I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chill out with my children and fly my birds. I'm just, listen, I'm not in your guys' world. I'm a street guy, you know what I mean? I don't have to ever worry about seeing your guys, like worrying about your guys judging me or saying anything about me because it really doesn't touch my bases or my nucleus.
Were you doing all those wild things from January through the press conference most recently to sell tickets?
I did a good job, and I did a good job, and I'm just happy, that we fought and it's over, and that if it's possible we could do it again and get another payday. Because it's really this is a beautiful sport and it's been great to me.
A very gracious Mike Tyson after the fight. He was humbled by Lennox Lewis, and Lennox Lewis, for him, He knew this was a legacy fight. He puts a stamp on the heavyweight division here.
He really does. And, I hope that revisionist historians don't start denigrating all of the opponents he's fight, the excellent fighters like Tua, Akinwande, and Galata. And now, of course, it was a diminished Mike Tyson, but Lennox Lewis has fought the best he could fight and beaten them.
Tyson came in, I think, to win this fight, Max, but he was subdued by Lennox Lewis.
Well, yeah, he lost to the better man, like he said. Mike Tyson has always been a gracious loser, with the exception of the second Holyfield fight against Buster Douglas, the first Holyfield fight now against Lennox Lewis. He takes his beating like a man, and when the referee starts to count to 10, he gets up.
Yeah, Lennox Lewis, by the way, he knows how to stay on point. He's a pugilist specialist, and he is the heavyweight champion of the world. That'll do it here from Memphis for right now. Right now, we send it back to the studio.
Glad to have you with us. If you're just now joining us, World Cup finished a little bit early, so we get a little stoppage time, I guess. And not only a terrific Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals, but a fight that some billed as the greatest ever. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch, but still, at least it happened. Mike Tyson ended up calling Lennox Lewis too big and too strong, and the Brit keeps his titles. It was an 8th-round knockout of Tyson, Lewis's 31st knockout. Brian Kenny's anchoring our coverage this morning in Memphis. Brian?
Proving that there is a tomorrow, because here we are. It's tomorrow, the morning after. Brian Kenny here with Al Bernstein and Max Kellerman. And many of you out there will get to see this fight on tape. But one thing about that, you can never recreate the tension and the drama that you feel just before this fight. You might wonder, what is all the fuss about? Well, before this fight, there was some tension. You were reminded of how uniquely dramatic this sport can be. Let's start things off. Round number 1. All 3 judges, Al, give round 1 to Mike Tyson.
Yeah, it was his best round of the fight. He came out throwing, amazingly, some pretty good jabs and landing against Lewis, and Lewis referred to this as a very sticky start for him. In round 1, Tyson was able to land some good left hooks as well, but by the time round 2 came, the Lewis jab was starting to really assert itself as we thought it might, and behind it came the big uppercuts. This would be an important punch in the fight.
Certainly would, and by the 4th round, the fight was a total mismatch. Lennox Lewis not only using the uppercut, but the overhand right, the straight right hand. There you see it against Tyson. He hurt Mike with one of those, and amazingly, Tyson went down, but Lewis was penalized a point for holding and hitting. There you saw Tyson's eye was a mess. Lewis just totally dominated this fight. There's Tyson on the floor. I thought it should have been a knockdown and a point away from Tyson. It went the other way. By the 8th round, listen, by the 4th round, you knew it was just a matter of time, and the time was the 8th.
And into the 8th round, Lennox Lewis now was measuring Tyson, put him down there, then landed a series of big punches, the biggest, a crunching right hand that would send Mike Tyson down, and this picture will be indelibly etched in the minds of many sports fans for years to come.
Mike Tyson goes down twice in the 8th round. There was an uppercut right-hand combination that first put him down about a minute and a half into the 8th round, and then a right hand in the last 45 seconds drops him, and Eddie Cotton counts to 10. Lennox Lewis is the heavyweight champion of the world. Mike Tyson, by the way, was bleeding by the 3rd round. The numbers in this case do not lie.
No, in his 2 biggest moments on the world stage, Lennox Lewis has done extraordinarily well. The numbers are amazing. He landed 24 punches per round against Mike Tyson, but the more amazing thing was landing 59% of his punches. It's almost unheard of in a heavyweight championship fight.
After the fight, Jeremy Schaap caught up with the champ.
Lennox, does this make up for the bite?
Absolutely. I said that I was going to discipline Mike Tyson in the ring, and that's what I aimed to do. I went out there and did it. I got off to a sticky start, but then, Emmanuel Stewart told me to settle down, so I settled down. And after that, it was just showing the world that I was a pugilist specialist.
The significance of this victory in your storied career?
Definitely a defining moment for Lennox Lewis's legacy.
Do you feel you've silenced your critics?
Absolutely. What else is there for me to prove? I've proved everything.
I'll take a look at some historical perspective right now. Highest career winning percentage among heavyweight champions. Of course, Joe Louis, the great Joe Louis up at the top. Lennox Lewis now, all those... Al, at some point, he was just holding a belt then. Was he the real heavyweight champion? As it turns out, maybe he was the real heavyweight champion all along. There's no question right now.
No, absolutely not. You know what fascinates me as we look at that interview? The very demeanor that not everyone appreciates with Lennox Lewis was on display there. In the post-Ali era, we expect heavyweights to be more flamboyant. He's not. He's soft-spoken, he's well-spoken, but he gets his point across.
And many people expected Mike Tyson, the animal in this fight. But Mike Tyson, a stunning reversal after the bout, especially a remarkable interview after the fight. Let's go back to Jeremy Schaap with Mike Tyson.
You fought a lot of good fighters over the years. You fought Evander Holyfield twice. is this the toughest opponent you ever had?
Well, listen, tonight he was the toughest. He was victorious, and a loss is a loss, and you really can't equate who's tougher from a loss. You just know you got your butt kicked, and you can't say, well, he kicked my butt better than he kicked my butt. I don't know. It's just, I'm just happy that he did a wonderful job and he didn't kill me in there.
You know, he said quite often that Mike Tyson had never seen a fighter like Lennox Lewis before. Is that now something you can say that he was right about?
Well, I don't know if I've never seen a fighter like that, but tonight he fought magnificently, and he was the best fighter tonight.
Where do you go from here, Mike?
I don't know, man. I might just fade into Bolivian, you know what I mean? I don't have nowhere to go and nothing to do, you know what I mean? I just go fly my pigeons on the roof in New York, you know?
You're not going to fight again?
I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chill out with my children and fly my birds. I'm just, you know, listen, I'm not in your guys' world. I'm a street guy, you know what I mean? I don't have to worry about seeing your guys, like worrying about your guys judging me or saying anything about me because it really doesn't touch my bases or my nucleus.
Were you doing all those wild things from January through the press conference most recently to sell tickets?
I did a good job, and I did a good job, and I'm just happy, you know what I mean, that we fought and it's over, and that if it's possible we could do it again and get really another payday, you know what I mean? Because it's really, this is a beautiful sport and it's been great to me.
A very gracious Mike Tyson, and we've seen him lose before, Max, but there seems to be more of a sense of finality with this one.
Well, yeah, and you know, the appeal of Mike Tyson, everyone acts as if it's just a bad guy routine. No, it's always been the juxtaposition of the wild man bad guy with the vulnerable good guy. Yeah, good guy, as it came across right there. And each time in his career, he's been knocked down. Say what you will about Mike Tyson, he's had the heart when the referee starts counting to get up.
This was a legacy fight, and Lennox Lewis has now cleaned out his era in the heavyweight division, and he still reigns supreme. Lewis Tyson is done. From here in Memphis, for Al and Max, I'm Brian Kenny. Let's go back to the studio.
All along, Mike Tyson weighed in with opinions about everything, mostly the one about still being the baddest man on the planet. Only now it turns out he's the saddest. Mike Tyson finally went down in Memphis the way Enron stock did a few months ago. Lennox Lewis treated him with disdain. Lenny, at the end, did you actually start to feel sorry for the guy?
Well, I did, and it was pure pathos. It was one of those situations where he was punished in the ring. I mean, you don't beat a dog like that. And then at the end, humiliated and pleading for another fight. I mean, his career's come full circle from nobody to somebody back to nobody.
Mitch?
I'll agree with half of your pathos, as in pay, because that's all it was about. And in fact, I thought the only honest thing Mike Tyson said was, thanks for the payday, which is, in the end, what this all is. I do not feel sorry for a guy who a day ago was saying, I'm going to put my fist through your brain, and then was saying, you're a splendid fighter, please give me another chance.
I didn't feel any sorrier for him than I did for Sonny Corleone at the toll booth. Because I think the real Mike Tyson was the guy who gave the interview to Josie Karp, the guy who said he wanted to smear those quote-unquote pompous brains all over the ring, and all that stuff, and that pathetic, whimpering guy afterward last night. I'm sorry, I heard it too late.
But before we get to the boxing display, and by the end, Tyson really did look like the black Chuck Wepner to me. Was there any moment in the fight where you thought it was going to be a fight beyond the first round?
I didn't, because the mistake that everybody made on this thing was thinking that they were watching Mike Tyson of 1990. And I'm sorry, but 1990 was 12 years ago when he used to come barreling out, and that's what everybody expected when that bell rang. He was going to come barreling out, fists ablaze right at the start. He walked out, tried to throw a couple punches. It was over for me in the first 15 seconds. He said, everyone who thinks this guy has somehow bought his past back has not watched him for the last 12 years. He is not the fighter he once was, or even close. And the thing was really over, in my mind, after he spent himself in the first round.
But everybody bought into it, and that's why.
Not everybody.
That's why. Well, everybody. But when I say everybody, we're talking about it today. People bought into it, and that's why I say that at the end, the humiliation of asking for another fight. I mean, he recognizes it's over right now, and for all that he's been, all of the bad things, he was good for boxing for a period of time, and that's where the sympathy comes from, at least for me.
He barely threw a meaningful punch. By meaning, after the first round. By meaningful, I mean a punch that really could do some damage to this particular opponent. And I thought one of the most interesting commentaries was the point kept being made that he throws one punch at a time and then backs up and reloads, throws another punch. I mean, that's not sophisticated boxing. He has nothing left.
But you know what I felt watching the whole fight last night? It was like a bill was finally presented for this life he's chosen to lead. And nobody made him lead this life. and not to be a boxer and not to work at his craft, as Mitch said, for over a decade.
Right, and for him to say at the end, gee, if I only had a couple more fights under my belt, I'd be better. How much longer we have to wait? He'll be 85 years old and still asking. And Len, I mean, it's great that you have this kind of sympathy for him, and I think it shows great compassion. But the fact is, he wasn't asking for another fight because he's trying to save his career. He wants another payday. He wants, you know, thank you for helping me make 20, 30 million. I want to make another 20, 30 million. He needs it. He still owes me.
That's where the sympathy comes from. He needs it.
He needs another.
But how pathetic was I love you, I love your mama, Lennox. I mean, that was
I was a little worried about that.
All right, let's talk about Lennox Lewis, because, you know, I do think there's going to be a Larry Holmes quality to his career. Holmes was a great fighter for a long time, and there was never any great opponent for him. But that was a very professional display last night from Mr. Lewis.
Well, the question about him, has it not been about the cautiousness that he has displayed in certain fights, and the fact that he doesn't seem to wish to engage, that but being 6'5", having the long reach with the jab, he's preferred to be a scientific boxer, and then, you know, and then when the time comes, by the numbers, unload the big punch, and not be a fierce, ferocious fighter, but settle for being a tactician.
See, I think the reason that he's not getting the kind of credit that he deserves is one of the many things that's the matter with boxing today. It has become so much more of a sideshow that you only count if you put on a show before the ring. He's a fine boxer. So Larry Holmes was heavyweight champion for a stretch too, but nobody cares about how you actually box anymore. They only care about the show you put on before you get into the ring. And Mike Tyson is better at that than Lennox Lewis is, and so Lennox Lewis somehow has to pay a price every time, except in the actual ring where he did everything he was supposed to do, except maybe take a little long, because Emmanuel Stewart was saying go a little faster. Otherwise,
by the way, Emmanuel Stewart, to me, was the real star of the night, because for all of the disdain that Lennox Lewis showed during the fight, Emmanuel's talking about Tyson with contempt, you know, that he was offended that he thought Lewis was carrying the guy.
You know, and all these internal, intergenerational arguments, you know, Jack Johnson versus Joe Louis versus Rocky Marciano versus Ali, et cetera, and now down to evaluating these guys. If you have a niche, if you got something you can hang your hat on, you got something to talk about. His right now, he quits today. Well, it would be, I beat every man I ever fought.
So would you ever pay any amount of money to watch Tyson box ever again?
No, and especially with the confession that he did all of this pre-fight hype just to promote the fight, that he didn't really mean it. How's he going to sell tickets again?
Well, show that image of him on the overhead camera shot, looking down on him, flat down, with his face completely bloodied and his eyes closed. Anytime anybody thinks that Mike Tyson is going to give somebody like Lennox Lewis a fight anymore.
Speaking of
2002. Early in his career, Mike Tyson wreaked havoc with his fists.
Oh, wow. That was quick.
Recently, Tyson has simply wreaked havoc.
Oh, great! Oh, and he hits him after the bell, and Morris goes down, and here we go again.
Last night in Memphis, referee Eddie Cotton was the man commissioned to maintain order in the ring.
I don't want any controversy to be in this fight whatsoever.
We'll see how Cotton prepared for the biggest fight of his life, and we'll hear from the third man in the ring with Lewis and Tyson.
Outside the Lines is presented by State Farm Insurance.
Hi, and welcome once again to Outside the Lines. I'm Trey Wingo, sitting in for Bob Lee. We'll debate the athletic status of racehorses in a few minutes, but first we are walking in Memphis. Last night in Memphis, Tennessee, Lennox Lewis took out Mike Tyson with an 8th-round knockout. Officially counting Tyson out was referee Eddie Cotton. Now, Eddie Cotton stands 6 feet 5 inches tall and weighs 250 pounds. Eddie Cotton is by any standard a heavyweight. His inclusion at the Brawl in Tennessee had as much to do with him spending 8 years refereeing prison fights in New Jersey as it did overseeing 19 world title fights in his 10-year career as a pro. Eddie Cotton is no stranger to controversy. He was the ref who disqualified Andrew Golota for low blows against Riddick Bowe. Since Thursday morning, our cameras followed Cotton's every move in the countdown to the largest stage in boxing, a heavyweight title fight with Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. Outside the Lines takes you inside the ropes with the Lord of the Ring.
My name is Eddie Cotton. I'm 6'5", and I weigh 250 pounds. I'm the boss. The reason I was picked for the Tyson Lewis fight, I believe, is that they wanted a bigger referee to handle it. I'm headed over to get my credentials, so I won't have any problem getting into the fight tomorrow. Actually, Saturday. I gotta get on that trolley before we leave here. I'm gonna have control. That's right.
No ear bite.
No, I don't see any problem.
Okay, you give a great smile.
Okay.
Way to go. Thank you.
It's official now.
Well, you know, I'm no punk in the ring, so I'll definitely respond the same way. You know, hopefully we have a good ref in there that'll keep everything in hand.
Don't, at the beginning, don't be afraid of warning, and if you do it again, you'll have 1 point deducted.
Well, you know, I'm hoping that they both will adhere to the rules. In the Mike Tyson's case in particular, this time, I feel very strongly that he knows that this is probably his last opportunity.
Safety is above everything else. We don't want any more scandals in boxing. You have the experience.
I've done 19 world title bouts. I've done 50s championship bouts, but this ranks #1. This will be a career fight for any official. Most of my experiences with the media have been positive. I've tried to respond directly and sincerely to most questions that are answered.
You are under pressure to a certain extent. Mike Tyson does have a history of bad behavior in the ring.
Well, I've had experience with other fighters. Remember I had Riddick Bowe, Andrew Golota with low blows. In the ring, things are happening. You know, I've heard guys grunting and squealing. The guy asked for his mama. One time he got hit in the stomach. I heard air like oozing out of his ears even. He was, you know, just the punishment some of the guys have taken. And, you know, sometimes when they go down, you look at their eyes, you know, they don't know anything. It's a violent world out there. It's a violent world. When I'm not refereeing, I like to relax by playing golf.
Great shot. That's great.
My chances of playing in the senior tour are probably slim, but that probably would be something that I would like to work on.
So this is the calm before the storm?
Yeah. A couple of hours before the fight, I'm thinking you've prepared yourself. You know, you've done many fights. Your experiences are great, have been great, and you're looking at somebody's going to do above and beyond what they have to do to win the fight, and may the best man win.
Well, referee Eddie Cotton, who just hours ago was the third man in the ring with Tyson Lewis, joins us now live from the site of the fight in Memphis. Eddie, first of all, I don't know anybody that can relax playing golf. We'll get to that a little bit later. But first of all, obviously you were picked for this fight because of your size. You clearly had some issues doing prison fights in New Jersey. You're ready to expect anything. What were you expecting going into that ring? Were you expecting it to be another disaster?
No, I was expecting a good, clean fight. I've been saying it all along. Ever since I first received the assignment, I knew once that I spoke to Mike in his dressing room and also to Lennox that they would basically abide by the rules.
Well, we got some shots here up of the unusual setup before that fight. The phalanx of security people back-to-back, one facing Tyson's side, one facing Lewis's side. Never seen anything like that in a fight before. You had to go into the dressing rooms, Eddie, to give them their pre-fight instructions. Clearly, everyone was, if not expecting the worst, preparing for the possibility of the worst.
I think that they just hyped that up a little bit. I guess it added to the whole drama of the event. And I knew all day long that Mike was going to be all right. And if you saw the fight, you see that I had to warn Lennox 3 times, and I had to deduct a point for his actions, you know, trying to swing when Mike was down and sort of pushing him down. So, you know, Mike was the good guy.
Well, that was my next question. Clearly, as the fight started going, you did have more problems with Lennox, or you addressed more problems with Lennox Lewis. Did you feel that Lennox, in the middle of that fight, was actually doing things outside the rules more than Mike?
Oh, yes, there's no question about it. And at the end of the fight, he apologized to me. He said, "I'm sorry, ref, but I tried to do the best I could."
Well, he certainly did. Obviously, he won with an eighth round technical knockout, or a knockout, I should say. There were a couple of instances there where it looked like Tyson may have gone down earlier. The first knockdown in that 8th round, it looked like he never touched, his knee actually never touched the canvas. Did you think that his knee hit the canvas in that situation?
Yes, I did. That's why I ruled it a knockdown. And if you remember, Lennox actually threw another punch. I'm glad that it missed then. That's why I sent him to the neutral corner and picked the count up from the timekeeper.
Outside of the possibility of fouling and the possibility of foul play by Tyson and Lewis, which we did see, and as you alluded to, you did deduct a point, how much did your size come into play in the first round especially, and in the second round? There were many times where you had to get in there and push these two guys apart, and they wanted no part of being pushed apart.
Well, they were 2 big men. You know, Lennox is really a lot larger than he looks. He's got a big, burly chest. And, you know, I guess that was part of his game plan. And when I went into the fight, I was thinking, I said that if Mike allows Lennox to tie him up, then I think that the Mike is going to be in for a long night. And, you know, it proved out that way.
When all is said and done and they talk about this fight 3 years from now, 5 years from now, the referee's name, Eddie Cotton, won't be mentioned much. Is that the way you wanted it to be when you went into this fight? Let the combatants fight it out and let me just take care of what I have to do?
Right, because good referees aren't supposed to be involved in the action. People came to see 2 great fighters do what they do, and as long as I'm not involved in any controversy or anything and everything is clear, I'm very happy.
Eddie Cotton, referee for the Tyson-Lewis fight last night in Memphis. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, the Tyson-Lewis fight was televised in 130 countries, covered by more than 1,300 credentialed media, among them Ralph Wiley, who's providing coverage for ESPN the magazine and also a writer for ESPN.com. Ralph has attended more than 50 title fights since his first one in '78. He's the author of Serenity, a boxing memoir, and Ralph joins us now from Memphis, his hometown. And Ralph, first of all, this was a huge event for the city of Memphis. Did it come off the way Memphis wanted it to?
Well, I think so, Trey, especially when you consider that the 2 things that Memphis is probably known best for, 3 things. Elvis, who died, you know, sort of a sick puppy death in Vegas, assassination of Martin Luther King, and barbecue. And barbecue only goes so far. So I think they were very proud of the way this promotion came off.
Well, speaking of barbecue, you could make a case fairly easily that Lennox Lewis barbecued Mike Tyson last night. It was an unbelievable display from one hand of a boxer who's been...
Well, you know, it was oddly redemptive for 3 factions, for the city of Memphis, certainly for Lennox Lewis, who proved how really highly skillful he was. I mean, it was clear that there was no way after the first round or 2. I thought this fight might be like Hagler and Hearns, but it was more like Hearns and Duran. I mean, he had no chance. You could see it early on. And then also in an odd way, it was redemptive temporarily maybe for Mike Tyson, because I know there's some fighters. Sonny Liston quit on his stool. Roberto Duran didn't want to take a whipping from Ray Leonard, but Mike Tyson went out on his shield last night.
Well, he certainly did, but it was interesting after the fight, Ralph. Mike Tyson was almost overly apologetic. He even went so far as to kiss Lennox Lewis's mother in the ring. Was this a classic case of once somebody stands up to a bully and he gets hit in the face, suddenly he's not a bully anymore?
I think so, Trey. Well, maybe not a bully, but I think there's 2 or 3 or 4 sides to Mike Tyson, and each of them seems to be over-exaggerated. I mean, I don't think he's indecent. As Eddie pointed out, I think really he was the cleaner fighter last night. I'm not saying that Lennox did anything overly bad, but he was using his body, and he did use his shoulders to aid the knockdowns, but he was clearly better. Clearly, there was no way Tyson could beat him. Not last night.
And after the fight, Ralph, Mike Tyson came out and essentially said, yeah, everything I did starting with that press conference in January was to sell tickets. I did a good job. Is he a lot smarter now than we've been giving him credit for?
Well, I think sometimes he is. Sometimes he gets caught up in his own hype, perhaps. And I don't think this is over either. I don't think boxing is like that. I think eventually there probably will be a rematch.
Well, that was part of the deal when they signed it, so it made sort of that begging in the ring afterwards, please give me a rematch, less dramatic. Here's the question, though. Considering that Tyson was so thoroughly beaten, so thoroughly outclassed, if there is a rematch, who are they selling that to?
Well, probably fans of Mike Tyson. He has to fight 1, 2, 3 fights in between to get that. But think of this. If a guy, he was thoroughly beaten, but if a guy is really punished and knocked down, he's not in there asking for any rematches. And Mike seems kind of eager. He's always going to have a puncher's chance. Mike Tyson can be 45 years old and he'll have a puncher's chance. It's much like George Foreman, even though he's a small heavyweight in stature. He weighs 234, but his reach is short. He's short. And then against a fighter like Lennox Lewis, it's just that spells disaster.
Ralph, before we let you go, whose legacy was affected more by this fight? Tyson's in a negative way or Lennox in a positive way?
Well, I think, you know, the answer is surprising. I don't think that this is the foil that Lennox Lewis needs to be considered a great heavyweight. I think he's a highly skillful heavyweight. I'd put him in the range of, say, a Larry Holmes, but he hasn't had that foil, that great foil that you think this guy's in trouble against him. And maybe the big Ukrainian might be that guy for Lennox Lewis. Meanwhile, I think Mike Tyson proved that, look, I'm not a total sociopath. You know, this is what I do. I do this with honor. And I think this was the, you know, that part of boxing that sometimes is noble. There's an ignoble part of boxing and a noble part. And the way you conduct yourself in that ring, there's no line in boxing, not in the ring, Trey.
Well, and we certainly may see it again between Tyson and Lewis. Ralph, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Last week's Outside the Lines examined the psyche of Mike Tyson. Safe to say there were many varied opinions out there on that. Here now just a sample of some of the letters we've received. From Commerce, Texas, the show covered more of what Tyson does outside the ring rather than in it. Let's not forget that at some time ago, this man was the heavyweight boxing champion, but due to depression and obviously other mental problems, has caused everyone to overlook that. And from Nashville, Tennessee, here's my take on the public's curiosity on Tyson and why they keep coming back for more. It isn't because we think he'll do something stupid and we want a front row seat. It isn't because we love shelling out $60 to waste 38 seconds of our lives. It's because we all have hope. We have hope that we'll see the Tyson of the late 80s and early 90s that dominated the sport of boxing like no other.
Tyson was trying to become just the fourth man to win the heavyweight title 3 times. Turns out the Ducks fighting their way down the red carpet at the Memphis Peabody Hotel might have been more competitive than Tyson's bout with Lennox Lewis. Brian Kenny, the day after from Memphis.
Well, a relatively clean and incident-free heavyweight championship title fight. Brian Kenny, joined by Al Bernstein and Max Kellerman. And we are reminded once again of how uniquely dramatic this sport can be. When you watch it on tape, it will not be the same thing. There was that heavyweight tension. Pick it up in round number 1, and Al, all 3 judges gave round 1 to Mike Tyson.
Yeah, it was the only round, in fact, that they gave to him. He came out and actually threw some very good jabs early in that round. Also landed an occasional left hook, and in general, had himself a fairly decent round in what was a pretty close round. But in round 2, the Lewis jab started to become a major factor in the fight, and often it was followed by this punch, the uppercut, which along with straight right hands became very important to Lewis.
By the time you get to round 4, Tyson is bleeding, Max.
And then you see the overhand rights, as Al just said, and the straight right hand really hurt Tyson in the 4th round, and I thought knocked him down, but referee Eddie Cotton, there you see Tyson's eye, which was a mess by the 4th, at which point the fight was really a mismatch. Referee Eddie Cotton, in his really attempt to be not to be unjust to Tyson, was sort of unjust to Lewis, I thought. Took a point away from Lewis for holding and hitting. I thought it was a knockdown. And look, by the 8th round, by the 4th, you knew it was just a matter of time. The time was the 8th.
And in this round, Lennox Lewis really asserted his dominance, had Tyson down once, and then with a series of punches, the last being a crunching right hand, would send Mike Tyson down. And this next picture will be indelibly etched in the minds of sports fans for many years to come.
That last right hand on the second knockdown in round 8, not unlike the right hand he used to knock out Hasim Rahman to regain his title. Lennox Lewis with the knockout in the 8th round, the punch that's overwhelmingly in favor of Lennox Lewis, outlanding him by about a 4-1 margin. Here's Jeremy Schaap with the champ.
Lennox, does this make up for the bite?
Absolutely. I said that I was going to discipline Mike Tyson in the ring, and that's what I aimed to do. I went out there and did it. You know, I got off to a sticky start, but then, you know, Emmanuel Stewart told me to settle down, so I settled down. And after that, it was just showing the world that I was a pugilist specialist.
the significance of this victory in your storied career?
Definitely a defining moment for Lennox Lewis's legacy.
Do you feel you've silenced your critics?
Absolutely. You know, what else is there for me to prove? I've proved everything.
And Ali still had to erase all doubt. There he is, Lennox Lewis, up there with the all-time greats in career winning percentage in heavyweight title fights. There's Lennox Lewis. Now, we wonder, we're always very careful, Al, to say, hey, this is for the championship, this is for one of those belts, and there's so many belts to go around. But Lennox appears to be the champion all during his era.
Yeah, he's shown, I think, what a great heavyweight he's been. You know, it's funny watching that interview. The very thing that ingratiates Lennox Lewis to some people and maddens others was on display. In this post-Ali era, we expect heavyweight champions to be very flamboyant. He's soft-spoken, well-spoken, but gets his point across.
And there was a surprise after the fight as well. Here's Jeremy Schaap with an exceptionally gracious Mike Tyson.
You fought a lot of good fighters over the years. You fought Evander Holyfield twice. Is this the toughest opponent you ever had?
Well, listen, tonight he was the toughest. He was victorious, and a loss is a loss, and you really can't equate who's tougher from a loss. You just know you got your butt kicked, and you can't say, well, he kicked my butt better than he kicked my butt. I don't know. It's just, I'm just happy that he did a wonderful job and he didn't kill me in there.
You know, he said quite often that Mike Tyson had never seen a fighter like Lennox Lewis before. Is that now something you can say that he was right about?
Well, I don't know if I've never seen a fighter like that, but tonight he fought magnificently, and he was the best fighter tonight.
Where do you go from here, Mike?
I don't know, man. I might just fade into Bolivian, you know what I mean? I don't have nowhere to go and nothing to do, you know what I mean? I just go fly my pigeons on the roof in New York, you know?
You're not going to fight again?
I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chill out with my children and fly my birds. I'm just, you know, listen, I'm not in your guys' world. I'm a street guy, you know what I mean? I don't have to ever worry about seeing your guys, like worrying about your guys judging me or saying anything about me because it really doesn't touch my bases or my nucleus.
Were you doing all those wild things from January through the press conference most recently to sell tickets?
I did a good job, and I did a good job, and I'm just happy, you know what I mean, that we fought and it's over, and that if it's possible we could do it again and get another payday, you know what I mean? Because it's really, this is a beautiful sport and it's been great to me.
Well, we've seen Mike Tyson lose before, but Max, this feels a little different, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, the appeal of Mike Tyson, yes, it's based on the dominance in the late 80s, but there's a perception out there that it's all about this wild man bad guy image. Not entirely true. It's the juxtaposition of that image with the kind of vulnerable good guy image that you just saw. And say what you will about Tyson, and many have called him a bully, and they might be right. But each time in his career he's been knocked down, before the referee counts to 10, he gets up.
Lennox Lewis, meantime, in a sportsmanlike fashion, has gone through the heavyweight division. Once again, a legacy fight and a legacy win for Lennox Lewis, the heavyweight champion. That'll do it for now. Let's go back to the studio. Here at the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, Lennox Lewis defends his title against Mike Tyson. A knockout, a decisive win in the 8th and final round of this fight. Well, if you were looking for a freak show, some sort of traveling circus to descend upon some small, unsuspecting city here in the South, you didn't get it. We had a professional prize fight here at the Pyramid last night, but it was also a professional beating on Iron Mike Tyson. Jeremy Schaap has more.
Mike Tyson has fought 3 big fights since February 1990. 2 against Evander Holyfield and Saturday night against Lennox Lewis. He's lost all 3. So is Tyson finished, or is he like a B-movie monster, likely to rise again from the grave? Where do you go from here, Mike?
I don't know, man. I might just fade into Bolivian, you know what I mean? I don't have nowhere to go and nothing to do, you know what I mean? I just go fly my pigeons on the roof in New York, you know?
Anything's possible. So you may see, in a unique way and defeat, a new Mike Tyson.
He still has some viability because he's a celebrity boxer. He can fight guys like David Tua, he can fight guys like Asim Rahman, but he's never going to be a creditable heavyweight contender again.
Tyson's been buried before. When he went to jail twice, his career was thought to be over. When he lost twice to Holyfield in a span of 7 months, he was said to be finished. But to the dismay of his doubters, he lived to fight another day.
People will look at Tyson in a different light. For a few days, you're going to see a spin. You know, Tyson fought a great fight. He's tough. He's not what you thought he was. And maybe they can resurrect him for another fight. But I don't see him as being capable of fighting at a high level anymore.
Tyson made it clear Saturday night that he won't stop fighting until we stop watching.
If the price is right, I'll fight a lion, you know what I mean? I want my children to have the same lifestyle I have and live the same lifestyle I live, so So yeah, I'll fight anyone.
But after being thoroughly dominated by Lewis, Tyson's peculiar appeal may be fading. Is our well of fascination drying up?
He will always be compelling because he'll always be in our mind's eye. The man that we saw in the mid-'80s and the man who sent a chill up your spine and you couldn't take your eyes off.
I think he's less and less compelling. I think he moves down the boxing food chain after this. He was so completely dominated. I just don't think anyone can work up any enthusiasm for his mystique anymore.
Well, they paid to see him fight tonight. I can't explain it exactly. I wish I could. It's a phenomenon.
Is there any point in having a rematch? Does Mike deserve a rematch?
I don't think there'll be a rematch. I mean, I'm not even worth getting into. I mean, it was a total mismatch after a certain point.
You know, it depends what the people want. If the people want to see it again, if they still can't believe it, I'll definitely do it again.
If I'm Mike Tyson, I don't want to have a rematch with Lennox Lewis. I mean, he may not have a face by the end of that.
If it's possible, we could do it again and get another payday. Because it's really, this is a beautiful sport and it's been great to me.
Tyson's career may not be over. He may, in fact, fight for one of the heavyweight titles again.
Against the very best fighters, Lennox Lewis namely, Mike Tyson is not going to beat them. Against the right kind of a heavyweight champion, I'm not sure who that would be right now. It's not Lennox Lewis. Perhaps Tyson would have a chance to win a title back. But tonight he looked like an old 36-year-old former heavyweight champion.
But I'll tell you something, the aura that surrounds that man, and when he stepped into that ring tonight, it seems that he will have that forever.
He's not going away.
I don't think he's going away.
And as long as he can make money for other people, there'll be a reason for Mike Tyson to fight. And people will want to see him because he used to be Mike Tyson.
In the world of pay-per-view boxing, Mike Tyson has 4 of the top 5 all-time hits, and that's not including Saturday night. The final numbers are not yet in. Well, Al, what's the marketability of Mike Tyson right now?
You know, when I left here last night, I thought to myself, when people see that performance, they're going to have a tough time selling Mike Tyson. And on the way home, I listened to Sports Talk Radio, and you know what? There were people already saying, oh, that wasn't really the real Mike Tyson. He'll do better in the rematch, Mac.
Yeah, Mike Tyson's a celebrity. He'll never fight for less than 7 figures. And look, sports is sold through the selling of a story. In order for that story to be dramatic, to be interesting, you have to have characters that you know and care about. Love him or hate him, we all know Mike Tyson.
Now, will there be a rematch? Right after the fight, Mike Tyson asked Lennox Lewis for one, and after the fight, Lennox didn't rule it out. You know, he doesn't mind getting paid here again, Max.
No, although Lennox should fight Chris Bird first, according to the contract. Look, out of the top 10 heavyweights in the world, Mike Tyson right now, I'd pick him against maybe 2 or 3 of them. They're going to have to find top 20 or 30 guys to build him back up.
Yeah, and Max, you know, I think they're going to have to go way down that list and find somebody way down near the 20 spot. Go off to Europe and see if they can sell it as kind of a little circus thing.
You mentioned Chris Bird. For Lennox Lewis, also there's Vladimir Klitschko and Jamil McCline. You know, who should be next for Lennox Lewis and then beyond?
You know, I think Lennox Lewis will probably fight Chris Bird to secure the IBF championship, and then I think he can't resist the next big challenge out there, which is Vladimir Klitschko, the big German.
That's the kind of guy he is, Ukrainian, actually. Chris Bird deserves the shot. Vladimir Klitschko matches Lewis in size and strength. He's a gold medalist, and he's really, if Lennox Lewis should beat him, you can say not only did he win his era, but he cleaned out this heavyweight division.
When he gets big on Klitschko, he says he's Ukrainian. I've noticed that. Lennox Lewis, there's always somebody else out there, but Lennox Lewis is the heavyweight champion of the world. There's no question about that. He's finished off his era, at the very least, by beating Mike Tyson. That'll do it from here in Memphis. Right now, let's go to the Stanley Cup Finals in Raleigh and Steve Levy.
Brian, thanks very much. Iron Mike or scrap iron? The only definitive answer to come out of Saturday night's heavyweight championship fight was Lennox Lewis is a lot better than Tyson. Lewis wrote it legibly and in blood on his opponent's face. The beating turned Tyson into a Hallmark card. He expressed nothing but love and respect for Lewis, apology and regret for his pre-bout behavior. Jeremy Schaap on what's next for Mike Tyson, on what's left of Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson has fought 3 big fights since February 1990. 2 against Evander Holyfield and Saturday night against Lennox Lewis. He's lost all 3. So is Tyson finished? Or is he like a B-movie monster, likely to rise again from the grave?
Where do you go from here, Mike?
I don't know, man. I might get fade into Bolivian, you know what I mean? I don't have nowhere to go and nothing to do, you know what I mean? I just go fly my pigeons on the roof in New York, you know?
Anything's possible. So you may see, in a unique way, in defeat, a new Mike Tyson.
He still has some viability because he's a celebrity boxer. He can fight guys like David Tua, he can fight guys like Asim Rahman, but he's never going to be a creditable heavyweight contender again.
Tyson's been buried before. When he went to jail twice, his career was thought to be over. When he lost twice to Holyfield in a span of 7 months, he was said to be finished. But to the dismay of his doubters, he lived to fight another day.
People will look at Tyson in a different light. For a few days, you're going to see a spin. You know, Tyson fought a great fight. He's tough. He's not what you thought he was. And maybe they can resurrect him for another fight. But I don't see him as being capable of fighting at a high level anymore.
Tyson made it clear Saturday night that he won't stop fighting until we stop watching.
The price is right. I'll fight a lion, you know what I mean? I want my children to have the same lifestyle I have and live the same lifestyle I live. So yeah, I'll fight anyone.
But after being thoroughly dominated by Lewis, Tyson's peculiar appeal may be fading. Is our well of fascination drying up?
He will always be compelling because he'll always be in our mind's eye. The man that we saw in the mid-'80s and the man who sent a chill up your spine and you couldn't take your eyes off.
I think he's less and less compelling. I think he moves down the boxing food chain after this. He was so completely dominated. I just don't think anyone can work up any enthusiasm for his mystique anymore.
Well, they paid to see him fight tonight. I can't explain it exactly. I wish I could. It's a phenomenon.
Is there any point in having a rematch? Does Mike deserve a rematch?
I don't think there'll be a rematch. I mean, I'm not even worth getting into. I mean, it was a total mismatch after a certain point.
You know, it depends what the people want. If the people want to see it again, if they still can't believe it, I'll definitely do it again.
If I'm Mike Tyson, I don't want to have a rematch with Lennox Lewis. I mean, he may not have a face by the end of that.
If it's possible, we could do it again and get another payday. Because it's really, this is a beautiful sport and it's been great to me.
Tyson's career may not be over. He may, in fact, fight for one of the heavyweight titles again.
Against the very best fighters, Lennox Lewis namely, Mike Tyson is not going to beat them. Against the right kind of a heavyweight champion, I'm not sure who that would be right now. It's not Lennox Lewis. Perhaps Tyson would have a chance to win a title back. But tonight he looked like an old 36-year-old former heavyweight champion.
But I'll tell you something, the aura that surrounds that man, and when he stepped into that ring tonight, it seems that he will have that forever.
He's not going away.
I don't think he's going away.
And as long as he can make money for other people, there'll be a reason for Mike Tyson to fight. And people will want to see him because he used to be Mike Tyson.
Thanks, Jeremy. Our ESPN.com SportsCenter poll. What should be Mike Tyson's next move? What should be next for him? Well, 60% of you say, pack up the gloves, get out. Some folks would pay to see a rematch with Lewis again. That's $54.95 if you'd like to. Thanks for logging on and voting. As always, ESPN.com, your place to go for all things sports and SportsCenter's Not on the Air.
It was one of the most highly anticipated heavyweight title fights in decades. Lennox Lewis, the heavyweight champion, in a performance for the ages, dominated the infamous Iron Mike. A determined Tyson showed great courage, but had no answer for Lewis's non-stop assault that ended in spectacular fashion. See what happened when history went down. Lewis versus Tyson, Saturday night at 9:45 on HBO.
Oh, Tom Cruise toasting Ali. We go from the greatest Ali to the reigning king, Lennox Lewis. Saturday night on HBO, Lennox sits with Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant. They dissect the entire fight with Mike Tyson. You'll see it blow by blow. They'll have never-before-seen angles. Even if you had the pay-per-view telecast, there'll be something new in this. 9:45 Eastern and Pacific, Saturday night for that. We have a few minutes here. When did you know that you had complete control of this fight?
I would say after the second round, you know, Emmanuel told me to settle down. So I started settling into my game plan and started getting into the rhythm of things.
Emmanuel was all over you, though, in the corner. He seemed to feel, although it ended in 8, that it could have ended much sooner than that. Was he right?
He was right, but he didn't realize one thing, like right at the end of the 4th round, I punched Mike Tyson with a hard right hand and hurt my right hand. So I had to basically, you know, count my punches that I threw, make sure of them.
Your hand is not broken, but it's noticeably swollen.
Yes. Yeah.
Nothing that's going to have any long-range effect, though.
No. I mean, you know, this is what happens. Mike Tyson's got a tough head, and when you're in there throwing some hard punches, you definitely, this is some of the things boxers have to go through.
The fans, by and large, were pro-Mike Tyson. Did that bother you? Does it bother you?
No, it doesn't bother me because, you know, there was always that phenomena about Mike Tyson, you know, that he's the best, and, you know, a lot of people couldn't see past Mike Tyson to see Lennox Lewis, and I'm trying to tell them, you know, I'm the best out there. And then, you know, it's not until they see it for themselves till they actually realize, you know, how far superior I am than Mike Tyson.
If you were at your best, and your best came later than Tyson, maybe you think your best is now, but whenever you think you were at your absolute peak, if you met the Mike Tyson in his early 20s, late 80s, what happens?
I would beat him the same way because my style of boxing is longevity. I'm a boxer puncher. So I go in there and I deal with the sweet science of the sport. This is what got me into the sport. Same Muhammad Ali. Me and my mother used to sit in front of the TV and watch Muhammad Ali, and I said, yeah, this is the man I want to emulate my style after.
Boxing has always been a corrupt and unruly sport, but do you have the feeling that in some respect you were like the sheriff here? You rode into town and cleaned it up by taking care of Mike Tyson?
Yeah, absolutely. I said that I wanted to get a lot of misfits out of the sport, and you know, for me, Mike Tyson was the last misfit, and you know, a lot of people said his show was a circus show, but you know, I just wanted to bring back a lot of honor to boxing because that's the way I look at boxing, to be an honorable sport.
He was extremely gracious after the fight for whatever he said in the lead-up, some of which was completely wacky and maybe offensive. He was very gracious afterward and very complimentary toward you. Does that affect the way you feel about him?
Yeah, I thought that was a very nice thing for him to do, and it takes a lot of courage to be able to do something like that. And, you know, he showed his respect for me, so, you know, I thank him for that.
He passed off his pre-fight comments as just build-up, just part of the promotion. Do you buy that, or do you think he's nuts?
No, I don't think Mike Tyson is nuts. I think he may act it sometimes, but no, I don't think he's nuts.
Does he get a rematch?
You know, it depends on what the public wants. I don't think he's going to be ready for a rematch. He needs to get some fights out there, and especially somebody that fights like me.
Where do you think you rank all time? My notion, and the notion of people who know boxing much better than I do, is that because you haven't had a defining opponent, and you get Tyson late in his career, you may have been denied your just due in the public's mind.
You know, I don't know the answer to that question.
But you're a very skilled boxer, and on top of it, you are bigger than Foreman in his prime, bigger than Ali, bigger than the menacing Sonny Liston, much bigger than Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano. So you have to be somewhere on the relatively short list of the all-time best.
Well, all I know is that I'm the best in this era. And I don't know, I don't like comparing myself to other eras, because that was other eras. But, you know, you guys do the math.
Last question, because people are going to email us and ask, Tennessee, what's that about?
Man,
just because the fight was in Memphis?
Yeah, they showed me so much love when I was down there. I just wanted to show them a bit of respect and said, you know, thanks, because, you know, it was much appreciated. They looked after all of us.
I know we have to shake left-handed because the right hand is hurting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lennox Lewis, heavyweight champion of the world.
I thought it was just a magnificent performance by Lennox Lewis. He did everything right. I gave the first round to Mike Tyson, but from then on out, it was all Lennox Lewis. He dominated the fight. He used his height and reach advantage. He used his size and kept Mike off balance.
Well, there's Sugar Ray's take on the fight that was. We haven't been here on Friday Night Fights since we were down in Memphis covering the heavyweight championship of the world. And Lennox has always said it's very important to him. He wanted to clean out his own era, the guys his age first. So never got to fight Riddick Bowe, but he beats Evander Holyfield, beats Mike Tyson, and while he's at it, beats Tua and Rahman in the rematch. First, let's hear from the heavyweight champion of the world.
It's been a great, long road, and I finally completed what I wanted to do. Everybody was asking me about my legacy. Well, this is definitely a defining fight for Lennox Lewis's legacy. Answered all the questions. I'm glad I've answered all the questions, and You know, what else is there for me to prove?
All right, here it is, Max. I have my scorecard here, which I was writing down while I'm watching the fight. Round 2, Mike slows down at 2-minute mark. Mike flat-footed at 1-minute mark. Tyson has slowed down already. From that point on, it was done. It was a matter of Lennox imposing his will and his body on Mike Tyson.
Yeah, this was a logical fight, actually. You know, it made sense going in, was predictable. Most boxing people were picking Lennox Lewis, and it unfolded in a predictable way. Look, Lennox Lewis did not need this fight to cement his legacy. This does not move him up the ladder of all-time heavyweight greats. He was already one of exactly 14 heavyweight champions who have distinguished themselves even among all the other heavyweight champions. But you know something? When you talk about greatness, yes, Lennox is not as great a fighter as Muhammad Ali. He didn't dominate his era as thoroughly as Ali dominated his. He's not as great a fighter as Joe Louis. But I promised myself when I was a kid and these people were telling me Rocky Marciano would have beaten Larry Holmes, that I would never turn into one of these old-timers who would say, just because I grew up with a guy and idolized him like I grew up with Larry Holmes, I'd pick him against the current guy, even if it was unrealistic that my hero could beat this new guy. And I refuse to turn into that guy. Look, Lennox Lewis is way too big for Rocky Marciano if you're just talking head-to-head competition. Not saying who's greater for their era. I'm saying just head-to-head. Way too big for Marciano. Outweighs him by 60 pounds. And Larry Holmes, who I grew up with as heavyweight champion, weighed about 210, 212, 213 in his prime. But even a guy like Muhammad Ali, folks, would be outweighed by 30 pounds. A prime Ali gets outweighed by 30 pounds against Lennox Lewis. Now, maybe Ali was great enough to pull off a win, but it's difficult to imagine exactly how he does it. If Liston was the first heavyweight of the modern era and Ali was its greatest champion, the modern heavyweight champion at 210, 212, then Riddick Bowe at 235 was the first super heavyweight, the first heavyweight of the postmodern era, and Lennox Lewis is this era's greatest heavyweight champion, or super heavyweight champion.
I'm still recovering. Ali, I mean the Halo Ali, he would have tangled with Ali in his prime.
How many teams in the NBA from the 1950s or the NFL from the 1950s could really even get with the worst team in the league today? That's the problem. It just develops.
We could have a whole segment on this, but I would say Ali doesn't allow his head to be hit in his prime, and that's
Sonny Liston's a big puncher. He had a chance against Lennox, but Ali was not a big puncher.
Max, let's look next. Who is next for Lennox Lewis? Now, he's cleaned out his era, but there's always new challengers on the horizon.
Well, Chris Bird should get a shot. He's you know, this just underscores the fact, how did Lennox Lewis beat Holyfield? He was so much bigger. Could Lennox Lewis beat Holyfield? Were Holyfield his same size? Of course not. Holyfield's a greater fighter. But Chris Bird is not Lennox Lewis's size. Just like Evander Holyfield wasn't Lennox Lewis's size, Vladimir Klitschko is, and it negates some of the advantage that Lennox Lewis has against these smaller heavyweights like Bird, Tyson, and Holyfield.
I know one thing. I got back from the fight, and first thing, I know Tony Kornheiser on his show said, "Oh, what does Tyson do? Is he done?" I said, "Tony, do you watch Mike Tyson if he's fighting? If you don't have to shell out $50? Yes. Everybody says yes. So what's next for Mike Tyson?
Well, there's several different ways Tyson could go. If you're talking about rebuilding him, look, there's the Robert Davis, Terrence Lewis could have been a contender guys that Tyson should just be too much for. There's the Joe Messi and Perlette guys who recently undefeated, who have built up big records despite the fact that they're limited in certain ways. And Tyson could feast on those guys. And, of course, there are also name opponents who've collapsed in recent years, like Michael Grant and Oleg Maskaev. Then a little bit down the road, you have interesting stories. John Ruiz made his bones in 3 fights with Holyfield. Holyfield, of course, and Mike Tyson will always sell. And then there's Shannon Briggs. And as much as Shannon Briggs loses, he's a big guy. He's a big puncher. He has fast hands. He's from Brooklyn, too. And it would be a big money fight, you have to believe.
See, no matter what happens now, I think everybody got the sense that, all right, Tyson is not going to be the heavyweight champion again. However, he wins 3 or 4 soft fights. People will be almost as excited as they were still about Mike Tyson.
With the exception of Holyfield, I think I'd pick Tyson to beat anyone on that list, and that's why you realistically list those names.
Now, first of all, you brought up Michael Grant. How about getting Teddy Atlas in the other corner with Mike Tyson on there? Oh my. All right, so that sells itself. Let's go back just 2 weeks ago, though, when we were doing Friday Night Fights from Memphis, Tennessee. I had a wave of nostalgia. I went with Tyson for 3. I changed my pick from Lennox late. Teddy Atlas had a little surprise for us as well. Let's go back 2 weeks ago.
But Max picked Lewis. I know that. You know what? I got to go with Tyson. I got to go with Tyson.
I'm switching to Tyson.
I got to go with Tyson. Max,
So, here's Teddy Atlas now. Teddy, all these years of the fractured soul, a broken human being, and you picked Mike Tyson to be the heavyweight champion of the world in 1 round. Explain yourself.
It was my anti-Max pick.
Oh, no, that doesn't do it. Come on.
Max, congratulations, Max. Congratulations. You finally got one right.
Logic prevails.
Listen, I was ready to pick. You know, I don't usually go the weak way like this. I was ready to pick Lewis. I picked Lewis on other forums. But once Max picked Lewis,
I jinxed him.
I just had to go. I had to go forward and take Tyson. And if I was going to take him, I was going to take him to get lucky in the first round. Look, I didn't really think that he was the better guy. If he was going to get lucky, he was going to be the first round. I don't think he's a fighter. I don't have to apologize to myself or defend myself. I've been saying it for years that he's not a fighter anymore. He doesn't throw punches. And more importantly, he don't throw punches where he needs to. He gets inside.
But you picked him in one round.
Lewis tied him. I know Lewis tied him up. Lewis tied him up early, but Tyson puts his hands behind him. If he was going to throw something, he was going to catch him the first round. I just wanted to make Max look good. I'm a team player here, and I was looking out for my boy Max.
Teddy, Tyson never really threw that many punches, but he is a big puncher. But what does it say about his ability? And yeah, I know Lennox has a somewhat fragile chin. He can be reached and knocked out. He's been in the past. But Tyson does have enough ability, or at least did. I mean, aren't some guys, Sonny Liston comes to mind, maybe Tyson's another one, they have so much ability that when you review their careers in their primes, even if they didn't have the character of a Holyfield, Marciano, or Ali, you have to give them their credit as perhaps great fighters anyway.
Well, Tyson was a fighter 10, 12 years ago, no doubt about it. But I'll say one thing, and I say it, I'm not ashamed, I'm not afraid to say it. He's had 4 fights in his life. 2 with Holyfield, 1 with Buster Douglas, and 1 with Lennox Lewis. He got knocked out in all 4. Those are the only fights where guys put up resistance and had enough skill to deal with his power and his skill. Those are the only times he was contested. All the other fights that he didn't knock guys out, they made silent agreements. They made deals to survive. The only 4 times Tyson was in fights, boom, he got knocked out. He was out of there.
Yeah, but you know, but it's like not giving him credit, Teddy, because he took out Michael Spinks so easily. Like he doesn't get credit for that because he knocked him out?
No, I'll give him credit, but the 4 times that he was contested in fights were guys like Bone Crusher Smith and Tony Tucker, not bad, but guys that really didn't fight to win, guys that were glad to accept those clinches, accept those silent deals, just were in there to survive. Tyson was never really confronted, and he was confronted 4 times, and guess what? He was exposed 4 times.
But Teddy, is Sonny Liston a Hall of Famer in your opinion?
I don't know if I can make him a Hall of Famer. I don't know. I mean, he's going to be in a Hall.
Was he a great fighter?
No, he wasn't consistent enough against the guys that he needed to be consistent with to be really a great fighter.
My point is there are some guys who have character deficiencies that can be exploited by other guys and fine, and they lose those in those big moments. And Tyson maybe didn't even have the honest discipline of like a Mickey Ward or a Harold Brazier, but he generally showed up in shape, generally fought aggressively, and usually blew out pretty good opposition.
When the playing field was in his favor, when the ingredients, when the elements, when the stars lined up probably, like when they line up properly when Max finally gets to win. When everything lined up properly.
When the moon's in the 7th house.
Yeah, and Tyson could hit a guy on the chin, and Tyson could get his way, and Tyson was not contested. Then Tyson was explosive. He was sensational, and that's what we think of, and that's why we rate him, and you rate him so high.
All right, Teddy, we have to get back to live boxing, but you notice we don't have a little money belt when you did like your $1 million match at DiBiase 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Time for To The Max on ESPN.com. You can ask Max here a question, so let's set the clock. We're going to start off in Luther, Oklahoma. Here's Jeremy. I know this is something that we use here To The Max. This has been out there, but we haven't addressed it directly. Here from Jeremy, do you feel Tyson was on prescription drug medication that might have helped him keep level-headed to just look for to get that payday against Lennox Lewis? A lot of people said, hey, he looked sedated after the fight, certainly, and during the fight, who knows?
I have no knowledge about this that anyone else, that other people don't have. In my opinion, yes, I thought he was sedated. It looked down even the day before the fight already, even though he was animated, he wasn't quite out of control. By fight night, he looked subdued. During the fight, he didn't fight in a particularly aggressive fight. And after the fight, it sounded like Tyson on medication. Now, would he have performed better without it? Maybe. Had he performed at all without it, maybe better. Would it have affected the outcome of the fight ultimately? Of course not. Lennox was going to win anyway.
It's an interesting topic. Again, been on record that Tyson has been on different sorts of medication as well. But that night after that first round, I think that's all he had anyway.
The medicine he took really was from Lennox Lewis, and it was a sickening display of humongous right hands that Tyson had to take through 8 rounds.
Bob?
Well, Lennox Lewis says he just wants to keep us guessing. The heavyweight champion of the world still doesn't know who's next after the demolition of Mike Tyson, but he is sounding off about one of his challengers, Vladimir Klitschko. Said Lewis, he's not tough enough. It would be a waste of my time to go and fight him. I would knock him out. Klitschko comes off a win over the over-the-hill Ray Mercer, but before that had a signature win over Chris Bird. So if he doesn't want the Ukrainian, who else is there? Well, there is Chris Bird. After losing to Klitschko, he outpointed David Tua, quality win. Jameel McCline has made himself into a top-5 heavyweight, and the winner of Kirk Johnson, John Ruiz, should also be considered. Those two will meet July 27th. Klitschko, still only 25 years old, would probably be better steering clear of Lennox this year. Anyway, by the way, Mike Tyson, keep in mind, has exercised the option for a rematch against Lennox Lewis, but each can get an optional fight first.